Yo, what's going on, everybody? Y'all got on me last week because my yo didn't have enough enthusiasm. We're doing it this week, guys. It's going down on pay-per-view, and it's none other than Khamzat Chimaev. He's getting that first crack at a UFC belt, and he's doing it against Dricus Du Plessis, the undisputed champion. We got the phone going off. We're blowing up off the hook today because everybody wants to know who's the lock in the main event. Y'all have to wait till we get there, right? We start with the beginning, we work our way to the top, and you know we can't do it without a great guest, guys. Back on the show, my guy, MMA, Jewish better. Nobody do it better. How are you doing, my brother?
My fucking dog. Yo, I love this card. I'm super fucking hyped. I don't have a camera right now. My camera's not working for fucking whatever reason. So, yeah, bro. I studied these fights, though. I'm hyped up. It's a fucking banger pay-per-view in Chicago. And y'all seen my fucking mug 100 fucking times. We know what I look like. Doesn't matter. I'm here to give the info. And maybe I'll pop in at some point if I get my camera to work. But for now, we'll just let the picks fly, bro. I'm excited for this card. And hopefully the people are as well, man. This is a fucking really good card from top to bottom.
No doubt about it, my brother. We got the sharpest chat in the game already starting to flow in. I see more and more people coming in as we've been getting live. So want to say first off the top, appreciate each and every one of you guys for being here. If you guys like what we do here, drop a like on the stream because it helps other people find the show. Make sure if you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Very easy way to show love and support, and I truly appreciate it. But guys, with that being said, like I always say, we start from the bottom, we work our way on up to the top. And this week on the card, guys, we had 2 fights fall off already. If you guys don't pay attention closely during the week, that's A-okay. We're going to bring you up to speed. Bobby Green was supposed to be fighting at this card. He's not going to be competing, right? He's actually on crutches, guys. So prayers up for Bobby Green. He's unable to walk. He said if it was a broken hand, if it was something like that, he'd have found a way to make the walk anyway. Couldn't do it. So Carlos Diego Ferreira, he's now on the outside looking in. I don't think they're going to try and book a replacement for him this week. If that changes, we will keep you guys up to speed. But as of now, that fight has been canceled. Also, guys, it's important to note, there were supposed to be 2 Ultimate Fighter finales. Danil, right, the Ukrainian fellow, was supposed to fight the Brazilian fellow. And the reason I don't know their names so good, guys, that fight got pulled from the card. My research, my focus went elsewhere right away. So if you had pressed me for a pick, I would have picked that Danil guy. He got an incredible knockout on the last episode of The Ultimate Fighter. But with that being said, guys, we don't have to worry about those fights. We got 13 fights still to worry about, starting with this first fight of the night. And this one, guys, is an Ultimate Fighter finale right off the rip. So we've got Alibi Idris taking on Joseph Morales. This is going to be the flyweight final. And without further ado, guys, we're going to send the first fight of the night to my brother, Jewish Better. Let's see what he thinks about this Ultimate Fighter fight. Do you have strong thoughts, my man? Or is this one where maybe it was lower on your priority list? I know we had to go back and watch some reality TV to get our answers here.
Bro, I don't got shit on this fight. Yeah, I'm not even going to lie to you and sit here and act like I studied the hell out of this fight. But I will say I did look a little into Joseph Morales, and it seemed like, he could make some mistakes on the ground, like we had talked about a little bit before. I tend to agree with that. And I got to just look more into this fight. I don't want to give you, like, a concrete opinion because I don't really have one, but seems like this guy, for the most part, was like a UFC reject. Took a few years off fighting. Maybe he's back now. Maybe this is the second leg of his career, but looks like Alibi is a big favorite, so the books don't think so. And I'll have to see what, props we get later in the week, but I'm interested to hear your thoughts on this. I know you've done, like, a lot more studying on this specific fight than I have. So, yeah.
Yeah, man, I would say that in terms of, I always have to work within my deadlines, right? And today, guys, I had to write up 8 fights that are on these prelims before, a Thursday, right? So I had to prioritize getting all my research done rather than just deep diving as far as I possibly could into every matchup. And when you look at an Ultimate Fighter finale, I encourage you guys, deep dive as much as you can. These are fights that, guys tend to get better in that Ultimate Fighter house. So you might have one guy enter with certain regional skills, and then he comes onto the show and gets a lot better. You've got a guy in Joseph Morales. He's got UFC experience under his belt. Yes, he's coming in through the Ultimate Fighter, but he's 1-2 in the promotion. You guys know, I watch in every week, right? So I'm always in the game. I forgot about Joseph Morales. I did not know this guy had competed in the UFC. He got beat by Figueiredo. He got finished in that fight. He lost a split decision to Eric Shelton. Here's your hat. What's your hurry? They kicked him right out of the UFC. And if you look at Joseph Morales, he did have a win in the promotion as well against a guy who was 1-2. He went 1-2 in the UFC. So Joseph Morales has kind of been kicking around for a while and looking to build his way back to this opportunity. So he's a guy that's put in the sweat equity. My guy, Dan from Half the Battle, might say something like he paid his dues, right? He went on the regional scene. He got some of these tough wins. I know he beat a local legend, right? I say this a little bit loosely, right? But a local regional legend, Shorty Rock Santella. So the guy, Joseph Morales, been out there putting in some time, putting in some hard work. But then I gotta take the compliment sandwich, right? We said some nice things about him off the top, but here's the other thing, my God's honest truth opinion is that I don't think he should be here, right? He fought this guy on Contender Series. I believe his name, or not Contender Series, excuse me, on The Ultimate Fighter. I believe his name was Imanol Rodriguez, off the top of my head. And guys, I thought Imanol Rodriguez won that fight. It's a 3-round contest. Joseph comes out in the first round. He's doing well, establishing some takedowns, getting to his positions, looking for the back take. And Daniel Cormier, like this was a first day at jiu-jitsu classes, walking his guy, Imanol, through how to get out of this back take. And by the time that he talked him through it, Imanol got back up to his feet. He started landing a little bit, started getting his confidence back. Round 2 was a close round. I do think Morales understands optics. He went out there and started throwing hard with about 30 seconds left, tried to, leave an impression in the judges' minds. But to tell you the truth, I thought maybe 3.5, 4 minutes of that round were won by his opponent there. And then Imanol, guys, in the third round, it was not even competitive whatsoever. Imanol came out there. He took his lunch money. He landed big shots on the feet in the first 25 seconds. Then he took him down. He took his back. He held his back for the remainder of the contest. So for me, it was kind of a travesty that Imanol did not get the opportunity. So shout out to Joseph. He's a guy that's clearly worked hard. He did get a finish in the quarterfinals to advance his way. He's got good submissions in the early going. If I had to make a criticism of his game, I would say he's a little bit front-loaded. I would say that as a striker, I'm not extremely impressed by him. I think that he's a willing boxer. He'll stand in the pocket, throw some committed combinations. But aside from that, I think he's a bit plodding with his footwork. I think that his head movement needs some work and improvement if he wants to succeed at the UFC level. And I also think, if you're going to ply your trade as a wrestler and a grappler in this sport, it's not a great look to be going out there and getting out-wrestled and out-grappled by a guy who, maybe isn't on your level in Imanol Rodriguez. And I think part of it is the fact that this guy's getting tired. So on the other side, I think that Alibi Idris is the guy who looks to me like a more UFC-ready product, if I'm being frank. I do respect the fact that Morales has already been here, but I look at Alibi and he's a little bit wild. He's a little bit reckless. That could be the undoing of him, right? He could get clipped on the chin, something like this. He takes a lot of chances. He throws a lot in the pocket. He kind of starts jumping in the air and taking some random risks on the feet, but he's unpredictable. He's a guy that's willing to mix it up in all phases. He'll go with you on the feet. He'll take you to the ground. He'll mix it up there. He's not afraid to go look for ground and pound as well, which is something I really like about this guy. When he gets the top position, unlike Morales, who's going to kind of pigeonhole himself into fishing for chokes, looking for control, and he could lose a round if somebody gets on top, starts doing some ground and pound. And I think on the other side, Alibi's a guy that's constantly looking to do damage, right? You look at that Roybert Echeverria fight, his semifinal. How did he make it here? He left absolutely no doubt, guys. He was walking Roybert down. He was landing good shots on the feet. He was getting in his face. He was being more active. He was looking for the takedowns. And every time that Roybert would stuff a takedown or get back up to his feet, he was right back on him with the pressure, right back on him with the hands. And ultimately, what I saw from Alibi in that fight was that he knocked him down with that knee. He followed up viciously with the ground and pound. He was ready to close the show. And Roybert, he was out, he was not ready to continue. So ultimately, I think that Alibi, he's a guy that's got some serious wins outside the UFC as well. He's gone out there, put in some time. I think it's Niza. I don't want to mispronounce it, but I think it's Naiza is the promotion. They've been putting out a couple of decent fighters from there. And these Kazakhstan fighters, man, that they're willing to go hard. They're willing to push that pace. They got a pretty solid chin. They're willing to go out there and take some chances. So for all those reasons, man, it's a big money line price. I'm not advocating you go lay it, but I thought he would be favored in this fight. I think he's the guy that's going to win the fight. So ultimately, give me Alibi, Idris, and I think that he might get the finish as well. I like his pace relative to Morales' pace. I think unless Morales has made some improvements to his cardio, he's probably going to get outworked in this fight, and he might get, overwhelmed with the pace that Idris is bringing to this contest. So ultimately, give me the Kazakh to start off the night and the favorite. All right, guys, next up, we got Karine Silva taking on Dione Barbosa, and I'll get us started here. this is a rematch, and when I started doing my research, I realized that, right? You look at Dione Barbosa, guys, 2 fights into her professional career. She went out there against a Karine Silva who had already been, I believe, 12 fights into her professional career, and she was able to get the best of her, right? She won a unanimous decision there. And you look at Karine Silva, she's 1-2 career to the decision. That has not been a admirable part of her game. And Dione Barbosa on the other side has been a decision winner when you look through her career. When she lost a decision in the UFC, it was against Miranda Maverick, a very understandable loss, a woman who's currently ranked in the top 10 in the division. So I think you got Karine Silva right there at number 11 on the outside looking in, but you got a Dione Barbosa who started off her UFC career 2-1 in the promotion, right? She lost 1 fight to Miranda Maverick that I could forgive because Miranda's a top level girl and also very physically strong and also plies her craft in the wrestling and the grappling. So I look at a Dione Barbosa who's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. She's a black belt in judo, and she's not a mark physically. And I think to myself, Karine Silva, her cardio not a selling point. Her striking can be good in the first rounds, but it does tend to slow down. The power tends to dissipate a little bit as the fight goes on, maybe the output as well. And when you look at her grappling, it's probably her best attribute, right? She's a dangerous grappler. She's a willing submission hunter. And she had an opportunity to submit this girl 2 fights into her pro career, was not able to do it. And now she's got to do it against a black belt in multiple disciplines of grappling. And that just seems like a hard ask. So I do think Karine Silva has the power, the speed, the tenacity, the violence early in the fight to come out here and put some hands on Barbosa and maybe, land some big shots, mess her up. But frankly, if Dione Barbosa gets 2 takedowns, she might win this fight just on that alone, right? Because Karine Silva, very willing guard player, maybe not the best get-ups that you've ever seen. And we saw, even in the Yan Kui fight on, Contender Series, she was getting tired in that fight, man. She was looking a little bit gassed when she found the finish. So we know Karine Silva is a dangerous girl for about 7.5 minutes. She brings that fire. She brings that intensity. But on the other side, she's losing to Viviane Araújo, basically a 500 fighter in the UFC. So is she a world beater? I'm not sure about that. She had her momentum halted. She's still just 31 years of age. So, what do we know about Karine Silva? She can flip these results from earlier in her career. She got submitted by Marina Moroz, got an opportunity to run that one back. It went from I lose via sub in round 1 to I win via sub in round 1, right? But I think part of that was the fall off of her opponent, right? I think Marina Moroz was a lesser competitor, than she used to be in that contest. And meanwhile, Dione Barbosa at 33 years of age, not a lot of miles on the tank ultimately, and has a pretty deep competitive background outside of this in jiu-jitsu and judo. It seems to me like Dione Barbosa can go out here and outperform the line. I'm seeing, as high as plus 180s, plus 190s across the market. And she's already won this fight before. So for me, I was a little bit surprised by the pricing here. And, ultimately I got to go with my gut, right? And I think Karine Silva is used to being able to out physical, girls in this division, out hustle them in the grappling and be a little bit more skilled and technical. And I think it's going to be a lot harder to do that in this contest. So I think she has the ability to win, maybe even the ability to finish. But if she doesn't get a finish here, I think we're looking at a close decision where who gets on top is going to determine who wins. And in a close WMMA fight like that, I kind of want to be on the dog or pass on the fight. So for me, that's how I'm looking at this, man. I think Dione Barbosa is live to win the decision here. And, that's something that I'm going to be taking a look at potentially. What do you think about this one, JB? Am I out to lunch? Do you think that Karine Silva is the second coming, or do you agree with me that maybe she's a little bit overhyped for her overall skill set? Because I think she's dangerous, but ABC say always bet on cardio, and I'm not sure that she's checking that box for me.
I think both girls could tend to slow down a little bit, in all honesty. I don't think Dione Barbosa has like elite cardio. We've seen her slow down, been finished before also on the regional scene by Josiane Nunez. So we've seen her drop by Jenna Bishop before. I think Karine Silva could have moments. She likes to use that front kick up the middle. She throws it to the head as well via like Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson. And that's something, Dione's going to have to worry about if she goes in for a level change, right? That's a strike that's coming up the middle that, it is a feeler, but if you run into that kick right up the middle, it could put you out. So I like the kicks from Karine Silva. I like how active she is with them. She does throw the right hand very well, but, she does rely on that grappling and being physical early on. Dione Barbosa, like you mentioned, the jiu-jitsu black belt. I believe she's also a jiu-jitsu coach at King's MMA. So it shows, how, that's an accredited gym. They're putting her in charge of some type of program like that. I'll have to make sure I'm correct, but that shows something. That shows some type of grappling chops. And Karine Silva, like you said, she can be put on her back, like you said, in the Yan Kui fight. And it's a different style that comes from Barbosa. She throws in the judo, and I think, Karine Silva in these clinch positions could get a little overzealous, get put on her back here. Dione Barbosa has some really good throws. She can take the back. She's good positionally as well. So it's a very interesting fight. I do believe Karine Silva is, more dangerous on the feet. But as you said, the finish equity goes away a little bit later. She definitely has pop as well. She dropped Botello, it was before she, wrapped up that Darce. It doesn't count as a knockdown on her UFC stats, but go back and watch that fight. She put her down. She put down Moroz as well, before winding up on her back, getting that guillotine. I don't know if she's going to get away with some of those subs against Barbosa unless she hurts her first. And Barbosa's striking seems to have been improved. She's, fought. I believe she's 3-1 now in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. Got to go and look at her record, but good win against Karaskete. The only thing I have a problem with that is, like, has Barbosa faced, grapplers other than Miranda Maverick to the level of Karine Silva? I can't say she has necessarily, but like you said, she also beat her back in the day. Jenna Bishop.
I was going to say, how about Karine Silva?
Right. Fair enough, man. So I agree it's dog or pass, but I do think Karine has some finishing upside. And I was thinking about the Karine finish only, but man, like, this girl low key has some good jiu-jitsu, and she's like, what's her record to the sub? It's 8 and she's 4-0 to the sub, bro. Huge, and it's not like Karine Silva never been submitted before, man. She's 9-2 to the sub, which is really good, but you go look back, she got knee barred by Marina Mokatina or whatever that is, and the arm bar from Moroz. So, hey, a girl who's averaging, I believe, 2.3 submissions per 15 minutes in Barboza in the UFC. I'm looking at a sub prop too, a little sprinkle. I wouldn't necessarily just play the decision on Barboza. Maybe I attack the money line, but yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, I wanted to point out, my man, you're absolutely correct. The woman who's attempting more subs in her, albeit small, UFC sample size is Dione Barbosa. She's attempting 2.3, which is a shockingly high amount. And then you look at the Karine Silva side, she's attempting 1.9. So I do think they're probably going to be rolling around on the mat, attempting some subs here. But again, if it turns into a stand-up kickboxing match, like, would it surprise me if Dione Barbosa just won like a very ugly 29-28, where Karine Silva comes out throwing hard in round 1, maybe even hurts her, but doesn't get a 10-8, and then comes back out a little bit huffy and puffy in rounds 2 and 3? That would not surprise me at all. Also, shout out to Blumdog in the chat, says Karine was supposed to fight JJ Aldrich on short notice, dropped out a week and a half ago. That is a important note, right? So maybe Dione Barbosa just doesn't have it here, but here's the thing, man. If you're calling somebody on short notice, right, and you're like, hey, you want to go against this girl you already beat? It's like, yeah, I might do that, right? Anthony Fluffy Hernandez, guys, said he was sick as a dog, said that he was like injured, said he'll never take a fight like he was against Brendan Allen again. But he was like, I already beat this guy before when I sucked. He's like, I knew I could beat him again. So I feel like fighters, you have to understand sometimes it's about mentality. And, taking the Miranda Maverick fight, that was probably a humbling experience for Barbosa. Maybe she gets another one here. But it's like that fight was like against a really top-level girl who's got farm strength and 15 minutes of cardio, trains in elevation. Karine Silva, on the other hand, I do think she's got new supplementation. I was talking to one of my my plugs about that. I think she's got supplementation she didn't have on the regional scene. That's fair. But do I think that she's got pure, like, proven 15 minutes of cardio? I just don't. And so, Dione Barbosa, I'm not saying that she does. She's an underdog. You don't have to rely on her to go out there and say, like, hey, I know for a fact she's going to do this. Like, I believe this at a 65% clip. It's like, could this be a 50-50 fight? I think all the evidence points to yes. So for me, Dione Barbosa is the click or pass. And if you like the Karine Silva side, my guy, JB, did take some of this thunder, and so did the chat as well. So both of you guys, shout out. You guys are sharp. It was Barbosa by submission is as high as 13-13 on CloudBet. And then you're seeing the KO prop for Karine Silva at like 12-1. So both of those are numbers I would at least consider, if they're similar on domestics, things like that. just because I expect more often than not this fight goes the distance, right? But if you're looking for how could this fight end up, finishing inside the distance, number one, we got a girl on short notice. Maybe she gasses out. Number two, Karine Silva is a typical gasser. I believe off the top of my head that Vivi's been to decision in like all of her UFC fights. So maybe this is one where we could see a little bit more violence take place. And also, if they're willing to mix it up on the ground, shit can happen, right? I remember Kellen Souza and Karine Silva were in like a 50-50, and then all of a sudden Z-Lock and her knees exploded. So I think that she deserves that respect,
Facts. No. And in the Vivi fight, I believe Vivi had her in a arm bar. She had to go belly down, get out of it. She had to scramble out of it. So that's something to look at as well. And when you look at Karine Silva, we've seen she's not been able to get these finishes as she's moved up in competition, against Lipsky, against Vivian Araujo. So, yeah, Dione Barbosa, I put her more towards that level than the girls that Karine's just going out there and subbing. And on top of that, when we talk about statistics, 6 fights in the UFC now for Karine Silva, she's only striking accuracy only at 38%. And it's not like her defense is that much better at 47%. And if she's not getting takedowns here easily, and even if she does, I don't think it's, complete moot for Barbosa. I actually think Barbosa a little better off her back, just mixing in the sweeps and getting on top. So, yeah, it'll be an interesting fight for sure.
In a battle for top position, give me Shudo. That is my final read on that one. But next up, my brother, I had to debate when I was getting on this show whether or not I was going to wear my Bryan Battle t-shirt because he's coming off of a weight miss. We ended up keeping it in the back. If we have a post weigh-in live stream tomorrow, we'll be repping the Bryan Battle shirt, no doubt. But y'all have to wait for the shirt I've got tucked underneath the sweater today. But in any case, guys, we do have a very interesting matchup here between two guys that have only suffered one defeat apiece in the UFC. Nursulton Ruziboev has done a great job, right? Except for that short notice fight where he lost to Joaquin Buckley down at 170. He's been aces so far in the UFC, but you could kind of poke holes in some of those wins and maybe say, a little bit of a fortunate run out with some of these results, some of these matchups, things like that. On the other side with Bryan Battle, this guy, he's had a little bit of a hard time making weight at welterweight, but he had an exceptionally good run, dropping down to the welterweight division, looking like $1 million. And at 185, he does have some solid wins. He beat Andre Petroski, submitted him, by the way, not an easy thing to accomplish. And he also beat Tresean Gore. He beat Gilbert Urbina, sent them boys packing from the weight class. So you basically see, Bryan Battle has some skills, but at 185, he had to rely more on the speed, on the elusive footwork, on, his ability to counter grapple and be really effective in those phases. Whereas, in his 170 fights, he was a lot more imposing. He was a lot more walk you down. He was a lot more get in your face, rely on his durability, rely on the fact he can muscle you around, bully you in the clinch, except for Rinat Fakhretdinov, right? That one notable exception. So if you look at, Bryan Battle, I really liked him in the 170-pound class. At 185, I still think he could be effective, guys. He's 30 years of age. He's 6'1". He's not a small man. He's actually going to have a reach advantage here, despite giving up 4 inches of height to his opponent, Nursulton Ruziboev. And the thing that I think makes this forgiving for Bryan Battle at 185 pounds is that Ruziboev is a guy that can make 170, right? He's done it recently. We know that. By the way, guys, he was scheduled to come down and fight Rinat Fakhretdinov at 170 pounds. Fight ends up getting scrapped. Nursulton Ruziboev ends up fighting instead Eric McConico at 185 pounds. Then he stayed at 185, right? He fought Dustin Stoltzfus, and it was a little bit of a closer fight than people expected, right? Dustin Stoltzfus, guys, is 3-6 in the UFC. Bryan Battle is like 7-1 in the UFC. So you're looking at a different quality of opponent here, and I think that this should be a great fight. I think this should be a scrap, a good matchup. My problem here with Nursulton Ruziboev, I believe that he's a gasser. I think when you look at his body of work, he's not a horrific gasser to the point where he's going to quit and give it up, as soon as he starts to feel a little bit of blood in his lungs or something like that. But I do think he's a guy that can be held down in the bottom position, that can be controlled from the top. He gave up multiple takedowns against Buckley. He let Buckley hold him down from that top position. And I thought he got a little complacent there. He starts looking for his Kimuras. He starts trying to be clever down there. Maybe he could get something going with, Bryan's got those long arms and things like that. But I just don't see it, man. I think that Nursulton Ruziboev's best way to win this fight is to try and catch a kick and put a big power shot on Bryan Battle early, put some doubt in his mind, get him on his back early, because that's how we saw Rinat Fakhretdinov beat this guy, right? But Rinat needed to rely on a lot of takedowns, even though Bryan got his shit rocked in the first round, even though he got his ass whooped. He came back and started to make a better account of himself later in that fight, tried to work back up to his feet, never quit on himself. So Bryan Battle, for me, is a guy that I know is going to go out there, fight hard, normally push a heavy pace, and not having to cut to 170, I think is going to be good for his cardio. I think he already has good cardio. I think it's going to be better not having to cut all that extra weight. And I think he can let it go a little bit more. So am I a little worried for Bryan in terms of, hey, mixing it up with these 185ers with power? It did get him buzzed a little bit against Tresean Gore. That is a concern for me. But aside from that, I've always been a Bryan Battle believer. I think that this guy is a really good fighter. I think that he's got the personality. And when you look at Nursulton Ruziboev, guys, he's got a big following. He's got a ton of fights under his belt. He's got a lot of things that are positives in his direction. But when I look at the exact quality of competition and I start to break down who are these guys he's fighting, it's Dustin Stoltzfus, it's Eric McConico. The win over Bruno Ferreira was sensational. Could he do it if the fight lasted more than 2 minutes? I still think that's a little bit of an open question. And by the way, guys, I bet Ruziboev there. I just thought that Bruno Ferreira, now knowing what we know about him on the ground, had a path to take that guy down, and instead he tried to swing on the feet and got killed. And that's the way it goes sometimes, right? So ultimately, I think both these guys are quality, and I'm curious what you think of this one, man. I'm going to pick Bryan Battle to get the job done, but I think he was the same price against Kevin Jousset, and that guy is in the PFL tour now. So, Nursulton Ruziboev is a little bit higher quality than that. What do you think about this one, brother?
Yeah, I believe he's out there with the Sean Brady camp, and I think that could be a good look for him. But overall, I just feel like his run to the UFC was pretty weak, man. He's going up against these lower level guys, and you could even throw that out and look at the UFC competition. And I still think some of those mistakes are being made in the grappling. I think Bryan Battle just a little bit more process. You could say the size advantage, but it's not like Bryan Battle is a small 170er, and they're not giving him a guy who's a huge 185er, in my opinion, either. This guy just fought at 170, if I'm not mistaken. So it's two guys who have fought at 170.
Huge in frame, but not huge in like musculature, is how I would put it.
Exactly. And even Bryan Battle, like you said, those long arms got a 1-inch reach advantage here, even though Nursulton the taller guy. So I still think he could get that cage push going. I do believe he could grind on Nursulton Ruziboev. And in the striking, man, it could look, I could see Bryan Battle getting rocked, honestly, early, especially in the fight. It's not like Nursulton's not a dangerous, he's good with that right hand. He's got that right uppercut as well. But I think as the fight starts to go along, we're going to see Bryan Battle with the better process. I think he's a little bit more proven, battle tested, no pun intended. And yeah, I just think cardio is going to play a big factor here. Grappling going to play a big factor here. And once things start going south, I think for Ruziboev, that's when Bryan Battle is going to look to grind him out. I will say, though, I think Ruziboev's tough enough to make and possibly won't give up his back here to the point where if Bryan Battle does choose a grappling path, I don't know if he necessarily finishes Ruziboev. So maybe I'll look towards an over here, depending on the price. I haven't even looked at it, but just talking with you now, I don't think Ruziboev is like a complete bum on the mat. And if I'm picking Battle to, push him up against the cage, get some top time, maybe I'll look towards that.
For me, basically every Bryan Battle fight, except for Gabe Green, ironically, I bet that Gabe Green, it was Bryan Battle KO plus 1100, and then I had the fight not to go the distance at plus money. The fight lasted 11 seconds, and Bryan knocked him the fuck out. That was pretty awesome. But Gabe has gone down to 155 since then, right? So if you look back, like most of the time when Bryan's fighting, man, I'm looking at round 2 and 3, just because I think of this guy as a hard guy to deal with for 15 minutes. Now, that Randy Brown fight was a letdown on a number of levels, right? He missed his weight. It wasn't that convincing a decision. Could have went either way. So there was just, there are some problems with that, right? But most of the time, man, even if you look at that Ange Loosa fight, bro, like Ange Loosa avoided, cashing me that round 3 prop, and like if you look at Bryan Battle, this guy is typically turning up on people in 2 and 3. Petrosky getting caught in that choke kind of shows me, like, if you make a mistake against Bryan, man, he's got the wherewithal to put you away. I was pretty sure he was going to submit Kevin Jousset, and he went out there and just diddy-bopped him on the feet, walked him down in front of his people, and beat his ass. So I think that Ruziboev, again, is very intimidating in the early going. He's long. I think he makes pretty decent reads on the feet. That caught kick, I thought it was smart, man, and I gave him credit at the time. I thought people were, writing it off as a meme. Like, he throws a hard low kick. The other guy throws a hard low kick back. He's waiting for it, catches it, and then puts one through him, knocks him out. That was brilliant. But it's also the kind of thing where this guy starts off very hot, But the Cedric Dumas one, he kind of poked that guy in the eye, and he hasn't really beaten many good fighters in the UFC. He's just been beating the guys he's supposed to beat. So now he's got a real fighter against him in Bryan Battle. And, I think we're going to learn something about Ruziboev here. If he is like a real prospect, then he can push in rounds 2 and 3 here and keep it honest, right? Make it a Randy Brown type fight, close decision. I think my guy, Daz, might have said that right off the rip in the chat. Let me just go back and check. No, it was Dixon. He said the battle versus Ruziboev ends in split decision plus 500. So Dixon thinks that we're going to see close competitive action. I think that's a possibility. But if Bryan Battle is who I think he is, he's going to turn up the juice on this guy in round 2 and 3 and put some doubt in his mind. And if he doesn't get the finish, I think he's going to be working for a finish here. So for me, that's where I'm looking at this fight. Bryan Battle, round 2, round 3, or a close decision. And I think it's going to be a fun scrap. And the one thing I will notice, guys, I always put together a social media A-side report. I posted this on YouTube. Anybody can check it out if you're interested. It's in the navigation doc as well on Patreon, all that stuff. But it's on YouTube, just so you can go to my community page and find it. And Nursulton Ruziboev, guys, has some of the most followers on the card. So this guy's a star, man. Like, he's got 1.6 million followers. Uzbekistan is behind their guy. Ruziboev is one of the most followed athletes on the card, period, regardless of where he's positioned, right? So he's on a prelim. Bryan Battle was saying, he's like, I'm stuck on the prelims because of this Nursulton guy. And I was like, I don't know, brother. It actually could be the opposite. So both these guys are fun, interesting. I'm curious to find out what happens here. Anything you want to add before we move to the next one, my brother?
Nah, all those followers are bots, bro. They're all the ooze bots.
Uzbekistan. No, we love them. We love them and we appreciate it. Also,
don't say nothing bad about those guys, bro.
No, dude, I'm playing, bro. Dude, we got our guy Saeed Yakub Kakramana, a friend of the show. Are you shitting me? That's an all-time guest. But in any case, guys, we look back. My guy said, he felt bad about making a pun there. It's half the battle, right, with Bryan Battle. I think this fight could be close. I put that in my article. I truly do. When you just look at Drakkar and his body of work, it's not bad. He's lost to 3 guys in the UFC that all have 5 wins or more in the promotion. They're all quality guys. The one guy, that kind of had his career fall off was Tamer, but Tamer at the time was a problem. And if you look at the other losses, they're like totally justifiable for Drakkar Klose. He's had injuries. He's been out of the cage. That sucked for him. Edson Barboza on the other side. He's 39 years of age, but he's 3-2 in his last 5 fights. He's a guy that is pretty timeless, UFC classic. He can go out there and knock anybody out. He can compete for 5 rounds still, even though he's a step behind. So I think that Edson's an impressive guy. He's a 18-win veteran of this promotion. That deserves a ton of respect. But also, 39 in this weight class, kind of been jumping back and forth, right? He did 45 for a grip. He did 55 for a grip. And at 55 was certainly his better success. He went 4-4 in the promotion at featherweight. But when you're a guy his age and you're going up and down and kind of losing the weight, gaining the weight, I do get a little worried about that. On the positives for Edson, he's the much bigger athlete here, 5'11 compared to 5'9, 75-inch reach compared to a 70-inch reach. So I think that Edson could spin kick this guy's head off. He's extremely dangerous. But if we see a decision here, if we go to the scorecards, I think it's going to be a very close fight. How do you feel about this one, JB? What are your thoughts on the lightweights?
Yeah, I said he was battle tested. That's what I was going with. That was my pun. But I like.
Oh, there you go. Half the battle. I mistook you.
But shout out to our guy Dan. Half the battle. It's a perfect throw in there, dude. I like this one, man. Edson Barboza is one of my favorites. Like at the end of the day, hold on, I gotta fart real quick, bro. I'm gonna mute my mic.
All right, I'll take over in the meantime.
No, good. It was just a quick one. Sorry, guys. Dude, I think this is a fucking banger, though, low-key. I think Klose is going to come in here, and if I was his coach, and his coaches are pretty smart, he trains at the MMA lab, and, I would just say come in here and do what Mario Bautista did to Jose Aldo. You come in here, grind this guy up against the cage, push him with forward pressure. I do believe this will be better for Edson in the bigger cage. He has more space. The problem with Edson is I feel like it's hard for him to fight off the back foot sometimes, especially when guys just really start to get that pressure boxing going. We've seen Leron do it. We saw Sadiq do it early and hurt him badly. He's taken a lot of damage in these last couple fights. Drakkar, he took a bad KO in that last fight, but I feel like the cumulative damage, Edson's, taken a bit more in the last few fights and just in general as a career. That war with Shane Burgos was one of my favorites. I was there for that one live, bro, and literally I had to go home and figure out what had happened. I thought he kicked his legs off, and that's something Barboza could do. He has leg kicks, and they're really explosive. I think he could hurt Klose there, but he's gonna really. I don't know what weapon he has. If Drakkar Klose tries to pressure box him, he could hit him with the right hand, but I think Klose is gonna see that coming, and then he's kind of limited to the knee. And if he lands that knee, good for him. But if I got to depend on that, and I think a guy can pressure forward, land good shots in the boxing, I don't think Edson's reaction time is as good as it used to be. It's tough. I can see both guys getting hurt here, but I also could see Klose, grinding it out. And we saw, recently with a guy like Easy Dose, went into that pressure style grappling kind of fight. As you get older, 39 years of age for Edson Jr. Barbosa, might start to be a little harder for him to keep that pace in the grappling necessarily. And styles make fights. I thought Lerone, kind of whipped his ass in the last fight. I know people saying, Barbosa, stood in there, but dude, he beat him from pillar to post. Then this could be either guy's last fight, but I don't know, man. I have to look and say here that it's dog or pass. I think just a lot of cage push here for Drakkar.
Yeah, man, I was showing my article prediction on the screen. I think it's either an Edson KO or a Drakkar close split decision, man. Like, that's just the kind of way I see it going. And the one thing I'll also note is, like, I think both these guys could knock each other out. I just think it's much more likely that Edson would knock him out because he's a little cleaner. He's a little bit more aggressive. But Drakkar, he's a physical enough guy. He does come forward attempting offense. And one thing I wanted to note, these guys both fought common opponent, Beneil Dariush, and it was kind of a tale of two fights, right? Like, Drakkar close was kind of beating on Beneil Dariush, and then Beneil Dariush hurt him bad multiple times and like killed him. And then you look back at Edson, and Edson was losing just about every second against Beneil Dariush. He was getting beat up. He was getting backed up, like you said, coming forward, applying pressure, keeping him on the back foot. Edson's a kicker, so he obviously prefers to have set feet. If you keep him backing up, can't set his feet, got to rely a little bit more on the hands, then you can take him down. So there's layers to Edson's game that fall apart when he's under pressure, right? But he does have that big jumping knee, to your point, right? And that's how he knocked out common opponent Beneil Dariush, actually sent his mouthpiece flying with a brutal, jump knee from Edson on a reactive fashion. One thing you got to think about, guys, at 39 years of age, how much is your reaction time slowing down? Maybe that knee's a half beat behind and you don't land it this time, and Drakkar Klose can kind of just push you up to the fence and get some damage going off there. So for me, I feel like Edson Barboza is the better fighter, has accomplished more. Like, if you just said, like, who's the better guy, I had said about Neil Magny and Easy Dose, like, if they fought in their prime, like their absolute peak of their powers, I think Easy Dose would kick his head off, but they're not fighting at the peak of their powers. And I think that the game plan for a guy like Magny ages better than the game plan of a guy like Barboza. And I kind of feel the same in this one. I do think Londo makes a good point in the chat. He says Barboza wins a damage-based decision. That could be his path here, just land a little bit more thumping shots. But we do know that Edson can be outworked in decisions, right? It's happened to him many times in the UFC, happened to him many times in his career. And Drakkar Klose, guys, I believe he's 7-1 in the UFC to the decision, 9-1 career to the decision. So the judges love Drakkar Klose, and you got to be very careful fading that kind of trend line, coming into a fight like this. So I think that it's a fun fight, an entertaining scrap, but maybe one to keep our hands clean of. Two guys that are a little bit up there in terms of their age, and maybe the durability could be an X factor here.
Yeah, it's not like Drakkar is some spring chicken here, and this is a big step down technically for Barboza on paper, I would say.
Yes, but the other thing to note, man, is like he's done a lot of the fighting lately at like 45, right? And his strength of schedule at 45 was very mixed, right? He fought really good guys, and then he fought guys, like Makwan and guys like that along the way. So certainly a mixed bag of results, right? Even like Billy Q, who's a fan-friendly guy, but maybe a guy who's been on hard times lately in the UFC.
Bang. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better. And now it's just like it's the late stage of his career. Like, I don't know, is he really looking to make a run at 55 now? Like, I think, he had hopes at 45 and they got crushed. And now it's like, yeah, you get a step down in competition theoretically on paper, but
worth noting, he did find that exact same retreating knee against Billy Quarantillo.
So dude,
he still got a couple of those in the bag, but
that's his weapon. Like, that's why I said it's like, maybe he lands the right hand, but I think Drakkar just kind of pressures him, gets to the clinch where he wants. It is the big cage though, and man, you got to worry about that knee. So I would not be shocked, brother.
This is why we got the sharpest chat in the game, my brother. Green King 220 says, UFC 219, Edson fought Khabib. Crazy how time flies. You are not kidding. That is an insane blast from the past. We're at UFC 319. Edson Barboza still doing the damn thing. 30 fights deep in a UFC career, guys. 18-12. By the way, ducked nobody. One of the hardest strength of schedules in the history of the UFC. Look at all the guys he's fought that were absolute killers. Edson Barboza, salute you, sir. You have never turned down a hard fight. All right,
Straight
next
G.
up, guys. Oh, dude, one of the best. We're staying in the lightweight division, my man. It's one of our guys, right? If you've been watching this show for a long time, you've been cashing in tickets with Chase the Dream Hooper. We're making C's for Chase the Dream. I love this kid. 25 years of age, guys. We've been watching him grow up in front of us in the UFC. This kid was 18 years old. He shows up, beats the brakes out of Kanan Kawahe, and they were like, hey, listen, dude, you took a knockdown early on. You took some damage. Let's get you on a developmental deal. He goes back out, gets a couple wins on the regional scene. They bring him into the UFC, and guys, he was a scrawny kid. He was a 145-pounder. He was rolling for leg locks from the feet, doing everything that you don't want to see. But this kid has grown up in front of our eyes. Now he's starting to get a little bit more comfortable on the feet. He's starting to throw out a little bit more offense there. You have to criticize Chase Hooper from the day he got to the UFC to the very same day today. His striking defense is the worst part of his game, right? He's a tough kid. He's a durable kid. He's willing to take one. But he got knocked down many times by Steve Garcia in a one-round fight because he was willing to take him, and he kept having to take him because he couldn't get his head off the center line. He was not moving cleanly enough. So Chase Hooper has certainly made massive improvements from there. But the striking defense is still the thing that's a work in progress for him. You look at what he does extremely well. The guy is a grappling ace. His grappling is fantastic. You see him go out there against another primary grappler in Jordan Leavitt, and he out-scrambles him, out-hustles him, out-positions him, and finishes him. Shows his levels in the grappling, right? Paddy Pimblett got a lot of credit for going out there and beating Jordan Leavitt, doing the teabag on his head and all that. Our guy Chase Hooper did the same thing, right? Slava Borshev sits him down with the right hand, then follows up by absolutely shellacking the man and putting him in choke after choke, putting him through the series. So you look at a guy like Chase Hooper, I've always been impressed with his work rate. I've always been impressed with his cardio. I've always been impressed with his abilities on the top position. The guy can scramble, float his hips, move around, look for submissions, but his ground and pound is sensational as well. We've cashed in on big numbers on Chase Hooper to win fights via KO or TKO. I don't even know what the props are this week. So when I look at this fight, man, I'll say this, like Alexander Hernandez is not a bad fighter. He's got good wins in the UFC, but he's also kind of not gotten them lately, right? You look at the early portions of his career, he's beaten a Trinaldo, he's beaten an OAM, he's beaten a Beneil Dariush, and he doesn't really have wins like that lately. He's getting a win over an Austin Hubbard. He's getting a win over Damon Jackson. He was kind of doing that tweener thing at 145 as well, right? His best win, guys, in recent memory is over Jim Miller, right? And so could he go out there and show like, hey, you know what? I'm still getting better at 32. I've got this heavy top pressure. I can go out there, stay safe in the grappling situations. I can land big shots on the chin. That is the path, as I see it, for a guy like Alexander Hernandez to come out here and win this fight. But on the flip side, right, I look back at some of the footage that he's put together, even in recent years, right, and I'm seeing some cause for concern, right? I'm seeing Damon Jackson multiple times in that fight, getting the back, getting to good positions. I think Chase Hooper is a little bit bigger and a little bit stickier when he gets to those positions. I think it would be a disaster if Alexander Hernandez finds himself in those same spots against Chase. The other thing is Chase is not as, reliant, I would say, on some of the finishing of submissions as opposed to the getting off with the ground and pound. I think that he could take advantage of that if he's in those top positions. Alexander Hernandez has been, caught in some of those positions as well. My guy Ben in the chat says Hooper's best win might be Jim Miller too. That's fair enough, right? So I'm not saying that I, am going to lay minus 290 on Chase Hooper, but I think stylistically, I prefer the Chase Hooper side. I think that if I like Chase, I would probably wait to bet him live after one round. I think Alexander Hernandez is a guy that is typically a front-loaded fighter. He comes out pretty athletic, pretty dynamic. You saw, when did the back take start to stick for Damon Jackson? It was in round 2. It was in round 3. He started to consolidate positions, get to more dominant angles and situations. He was busting him up with the face as well, lacerations there. I think that this is the kind of fight where, Chase Hooper might have to go through it early. He might have to be through some adversity. He might have to push for multiple takedowns. He might have to go rolling into some legs. But I think when he gets this fight into his office, he's going to beat the shit out of Alexander Hernandez, put a pace on him that he's not comfortable with, and find the finish. So ultimately, I still believe in Chase the Dream Hooper. I think he's going to put it on this guy. I think he's going to put him away. But I respect Alexander Hernandez on the other side. I'm going to say he could go out there and potentially land a kill shot here on the feet. But I think the longer this fight goes, the more the youth, the more the enthusiasm, and the more the pace of Chase Hooper is going to make a difference. So give me Chase the Dream. I think he's got another one in him at 25 years of age. He's in his physical prime. He's coming into his own. And I think that he's one of the better American prospects, as crazy as that may be to some people. I know that on the feet, he doesn't got it like that. But if he can get fights to the ground, he's putting it in his office, and not a lot of guys want to be there with him right now. So for me, I like that for Chase. And let's see how this fight turns out, man. What do you think about this one, JB? Does Alexander the Great Ape have a big upset in him, or do you think Chase the Dream continues his momentum here?
Yeah, I'm interested in this fight. I know a lot of sharp guys that are on the Hernandez side that I respect, but look, at the end of the day, I just lean towards Chase Hooper here. He's the younger guy. 25 years old is crazy, bro. That is absolutely. He's going to be 26 soon. 6'1", has the reach advantage here as well. And I also, the southpaw stance versus the orthodox fighter. Here's the thing. I do think the striking is going to be competitive. I don't think Chase Hooper is completely washed there. Like, his striking's improved a lot. And I don't think Alexander Hernandez is like the greatest striker in the world either. Statistically, I look back at his stats, and let me go back and make sure.
I put in my article, bro. I'm old enough to remember Alexander Hernandez getting cleanly outboxed by Thiago Moises for 15 minutes because I bet Thiago Moises plus 199.
Beautiful, bro. 40% striking accuracy. Now, maybe you look at the other side and you see 51% striking accuracy. I don't know if that's like, just because Chase Hooper's getting these guys on the ground and absolutely obliterating them. So that's something to take into factor. And you look on the other side of Chase Hooper too, striking defense, as you said, 38%. That's pretty awful look. And I think what people think here though is that Chase isn't going to be able to get it to the ground. I just think he could even pull guard here, get this fight to the ground, sweep. He's so tricky with some of these positions. And once he gets to the back, he's hitting Baron Bolos on dudes. And it's not like, is Jim Miller a fucking terrible grappler, bro? No, I believe he had a sub attempt, if I'm not mistaken, on Hernandez, if I'm not tripping, or he got some type of takedowns there. Was he really, was Chase Hooper ever really in danger against Jim Miller? I don't think so. And Jim Miller's a high level black belt, so you showed me all those things in that fight. I know he's getting better. He's one of the very few people in MMA that I think are flowing through. He's going for banana splits in there, calf slicers, some high level shit, bro. So hard for
Very
me.
modern jiu-jitsu approach, which I think is
it.
important to note. Alexander Hernandez has kind of like that smash physical, very aggressive game that kind of is super energy intensive, right? And frankly, to beat OAM at any point and now grapple him is super impressive to me. But then on the other side, I do think that the more modern grappling approach is Chase Hooper, and I think he is the superior grappler. So the physicality early is the concern, whether it's on the feet or on the ground. That's where Hernandez is the best. He's explosive early. He's a strong guy. He's got real knockout power. But I think the extended fights for Hernandez, it's not like he has horrible cardio. It's just that when you're muscular, when you're using a lot of energy, when you're using that kind of laborious style, it makes it very difficult to sustain over time. And then if guys use their speed, their elusive footwork, and try and make it about that, Hernandez struggles in those kind of fights as well. That's what Thiago Moises did, guys. He stuck behind a jab. He circled around the outside. It wasn't the most entertaining fight you've ever seen, but he just cleanly outboxed the guy. And, Hernandez kind of left frustrated from that one. So I think that, when you look at Chase Hooper, this could be a learning lesson, right? He's still a young kid, 25 years of age. He could get another lesson here from a vet. But I don't see it this time. I think Chase Hooper has been taking the right steps. And by the way, who called for this fight? Essentially, it was Chase Hooper, man. He said, "Stop giving me these old guys. Stop giving me the veteran to go beat up. Give me somebody who's a little bit, more of an age contemporary, 7-year age gap here." It's not like they're giving him, another 25-year-old kid, but they're giving him a guy where they're like, "Hey, we kind of know what this guy is in the UFC. He's a 500 guy. He can go out there and give you an honest fight at 45, at 55, but against the best guys in the world, he's not going to win." So, Chase, you want to be the best guy in the world? Go show us that you can beat this guy, and we'll keep moving you up the charts. And let's see if you can do that.
Did you get a chance to watch the Aljamain Sterling grappling match, bro?
No, I didn't, but I did watch the Clay Guida grappling match. I've watched several
Right.
other grappling
And
matches
then
from Chase.
he also grappled Moicano back in 2021, which is crazy. He went to decision with Moicano in that one. It's a grappling.
And that was when he was still at 45, I believe.
Right. 20, dude, he was 21 years old. 20. Like, it's crazy, bro. And I think, you put Hernandez on the mat with some of the, maybe he competes in some of the wrestling, but I think he starts to exchange with Aljo or Moicano. We saw what happened against Moicano. Took his lunch money. I think I was there for that fight too. So,
and I mean, one thing I just wanted to point out, if you look at Alexander Hernandez, he has been submitted before. I think it was a belly down armbar against Cowboy Cerrone, if my memory serves. He's been knocked out several times, including, the standing TKO.
He got KO'd.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I think he got KO'd by Cerrone.
And you're right about that, actually. But I think Cowboy got out from bottom with an armbar, if I'm not mistaken. I got to go check the stats.
You might be thinking of when he armbarred, what's that dude's name? Mike Perry. Maybe I'm tripping now. Or it was...
No, I'm not seeing a submission attempt, so maybe I am tripping. But good call. Either way, yeah. I could have a blended memory there. But in any case, guys, he got finished by Drew Dober. He got finished by Renato Moicano on the ground. He got finished because of the pace of Billy Quarantillo. So I think that we've seen some evidence that in long, hard, difficult fights, sometimes Hernandez takes the door, and let's see how it goes this time.
I was there for that one. Yep. Renato versus Alexander Hernandez, bro. When Renato was so chill, bro, because I don't even remember that post-fight interview. He's gotten so much crazier, bro.
Yeah. He was like, $200,000, and my whole gimmick's about money. Keep it. Oh, dude. Next up, my man, we got Jessica Andrade taking on Lupita Godinez. What do you think about this one, my man?
It's an interesting one, man. Jessica Andrade, if we're going narrative based, she's kind of showing a lesser version of herself in the last few fights. But when we go and really look, a lot of these girls, I feel like that she's fighting are opportunistic grapplers. We go and look at Jasmine Jasudavicius is fucking up everybody. Went out there and took her lunch money. Tough one. Natalia Silva, super fucking high level striker. Hard matchup for anybody in the division. I think a lot of these girls would give Lupita problems. Tatiana Suarez, obviously the quick guillotine. She's one of the best to do it with the guillotine. Erin Blanchfield, super high level. Yanzi Aoun. My problem is I always never really been high on Andrade. I even faded her via KO in that Yan Xiaonan fight because when I watched the Lauren Murphy fight, Lauren Murphy tough, but I always thought Andrade just has she throws arm punches. She seems like she has this crazy power, but I don't think her boxing's the best in the world. She fucked Mackenzie Dern up though, and if you want to talk about similar matchups, look what Andrade did to Dern, and then look how the fight with Lupita went against Dern. I don't know, if you want to compare those, but the Marina Rodriguez one is the one I'm having a lot of trouble with, Liam, because I think Marina might be washed, as we talked about last week, and we might have gotten our answer after seeing what happened to Hill. So I don't know, man. This is a tough one. I do think Lupita could wrestle here, but I never was a big believer in her jiu-jitsu ever since, long time ago in the Panay fight. We saw, Panay put her in some weird positions, win a fight. We've seen constant bad IQ mistakes. Her, going to split with Cynthia Calvillo as a huge favorite. So it's hard to trust the girl at chalk odds, but I do think, she has the more ways to win the fight with the wrestling, mixing that in. I don't think she's a complete wash in the striking, and it's just can Andrade defend the takedowns? And historically, man, pretty good takedown defense. So I lean dog or pass here, but it's a tough one. I don't have a great read on it, and I don't have a great read on Lupita Godinez personally. I've read Andrade good, right? I feel like she could beat some of the lower level competition, and I just don't know where I rate Lupita. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say on this fight, man. 115 for Andrade too, I think, is a big point in this fight.
Yeah, man. I've always liked Andrade better at 115. I've been very vocal about that. When I'm looking at these two girls, man, the problem that I have feeling confident with Lupi, is that these are her wins in the UFC. Julia Pilastri, which I think is okay. But she's kind of a guard player, if you had to criticize her, right? Then Tabitha Ricci, which is, I think, her best UFC win. It was a split decision. Elise Reed, okay. Emily Ducati, Deese. Cynthia Calvillo split decision. Flat out ugly. Lost to Angela Hill. Beat Ariane Carnelosi, is aged like milk. Loma Luke Boonmi, good win, but almost like she beat Loma at like the easiest time to beat her when she was still getting her feet wet. And then you look at Luana Carolina. She lost that fight on quick turnaround. She beat Silvana Gomez Juarez, means nothing to me. Lost a split decision to Jessica Panay. Went to majority decision with Vanessa Demopoulos. Like, none of that screams like, wow, what a fighter. And then to lose to Verna and Mackenzie, I think is fair, right? Those are two top girls in the division. But then I kind of just look and I'm like, okay, Jessica Andrade on the other side, like I've been pretty sure that she's washed for a little bit. And you start to look at her results. You know, she's 2-5 in her last 7 fights. And over that time, you know, her only wins are Mackenzie Dern, which again, that's a great win, right? And a win over a common opponent. She absolutely boxed her head off. But the difference between Mackenzie and Lupita, if I had to make one, right, is that Mackenzie is a jiu-jitsu specialist that doesn't have great wrestling. And Lupi is a wrestling specialist that has like mediocre jiu-jitsu relative to somebody like Mackenzie, right? So then you look at, okay, you know, she loses to Natalia Silva. That's fair. You know, unanimous decision. Nothing wrong with that. Jasmine ran her over, you know, no business at 125. Tatiana Suarez kind of mugged her, took her lunch money. That result has aged a little bit worse, though I do respect Tatiana still. Yan Xiaonan, you know, insta-kills her in the first round. Erin Blanchfield takes her down after like a competitive striking round 1 and then takes her lunch money. So, you know, her last wins are over Lauren Murphy, retired, Marina Rodriguez via split decision, retired, and then Mackenzie Dern, who kind of just ran onto a bunch of punches and got knocked out. I don't know, man. Like, I can't really buy into either of these women right now. My pick in the article was Lupita Godinez by split decision. Just feels gross to me. I know that she could kind of hame it up, but when I just look at it, man, the thing about Andrade that I like is she's a great finisher. I don't think she's going to finish Lupi at a very high clip. You know, Lupi's a tough girl. She's got a good chin, 31 years of age, got a muscular neck. I don't think she's going to get bounced all around. So I think the girl who's more likely to get takedowns is Lupi. And I think the girl who's probably, you know, less likely to like quit and get finished is Lupi. So for those two reasons, I'm going to pick Lupi to get the win here. Do you have anything you want to add here, brother?
Nah, honestly, like I think that's good enough for me. Like I don't want to I want to force this one.
Yeah, man, I don't think I need to have any action here. People are saying everyone on Andrade and Ruzi this weekend could end up being a close damage versus control. Londo likes the improvements from Lupi, which was just on screen. Bate Asaka been collecting checks to pay for her divorce. Yeah, I tend to agree. It's so funny though, man. It's like she hasn't been like caring, but she still knocked out Mackenzie Dern, and Mackenzie Dern's like 1 fight away from the title. So she's one of those girls, man. But I think that this is a fun one. So let's find out. You know, as ladies fights go, like Jessica Andrade just deserves your respect when she's on a UFC card. The woman has wins in every weight class that they contest women's fighting, but that also earns you a little bit of leeway to go out there and phone it in sometimes. So I can't really trust either of these women, and it's not like it's a big price. If I had to pick, like, gun to your head, Liam, who wins this fight, I think it's Lupita Godinez. And I think if she gets an impressive win here, maybe they dial up the hype train again and try and get her somebody for UFC Noche to, you know, build her up a little bit. So let's find out.
Yeah. Let's see where these lines move too, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I could see money coming in on either side there. Although if I had to guess, I think Lupi's probably going to see the big dollars from the sharp players. So, all right, man. Although I honestly, it might even be a sharp split fight. Like I don't think a lot of sharps need much to be talked into Jessica Andrade at plus money just because of her track record. But I think that you got to take each fight on a 1-to-1 basis. And, you know, I do think the path for Jessica is a little bit harder in this fight than some of her other fights, because Lupi is just hard to put away. So I think that this is a interesting one, man. We got Gerald Meerschaert taking on Miho Oleksiejczuk. And talk about, you know, if this fight was in both their, you know, athletic primes, I would probably pick Gerald Meerschaert without much issue in this fight. But Gerald's 37 going on 38. He's had more than 50 professional fights, guys. And, you know, I never want to declare a guy washed, you know, officially, like say, oh, he's definitely washed. And especially not a guy I really love and respect like Gerald Meerschaert. You know, he's a guy that's cashed me many tickets. He's a guy that I follow on Twitter. He follows me on Twitter. Me and GM3 have, you know, that love and respect for each other, right? So I never want to shit on my guy GM3. But losing to Brad Tavares, you know, at this stage of the game, when Brad Tavares gets cut from the UFC right after, not a great sign, right? Not a bullish sign for GM3. He's kind of got his back up against the wall in this one if he can't go out there and get the win. And, he also lost to RDR before that. So how much do you want to hold that against him, right? Not a ton. But when you look at who GM3 beats, it's typically guys that are, going to gas out, going to fold up the tank. And, I just don't think of Michal Oleksiejczuk as a quitter. You have Kevin Holland basically turning this guy's arm inside out, right? And he did not tap, guys. They robbed him blind. I had Holland by sub, so I was fired up, man. Plus 330, cash it. We'll take that all day. But he did not tap to that. So as far as I'm concerned, if his arm wasn't snapped in half, he had every right to be mad at that stoppage and protest. And by the way, guys, he dropped Kevin Holland bad before that. So that could have been a win for Michal Oleksiejczuk in another world. And if we go back and look at his record, this is a guy that started his UFC career at 205 pounds, right? He went out there and fought Cedric Dumas, got the win. He absolutely needed it. Before that, he lost to Sharamagomedov, guys, but he did go make a decent account of himself. He got a takedown in that fight. Against Kevin Holland, I mentioned, he dropped Kevin Holland, falls into the ground, armbar, technical armbar, right? They stopped it without a tap there. That was kind of bullshit. Then you look at the Michel Demolador Pereira fight. We talked about on this stream, Michel Pereira by sub, Michel Pereira early. That seemed like his path in that fight. He went out there, bonked him on the chin, got the rear naked choke instantly. So hats off to the guy, right? But you look at his other performances in the UFC. Beat Chidi and Jaquani, loses to Caio Barajo. By the way, guys, he now trains with Caio Barajo as one of his primary training partners. He's at the Fighting Nerds in Brazil. He left Poland to get better work in. So then you look, he beat Cody Brundage. He beat Sam Alvey. Lost to Dustin Jacoby up at 205, a guy that's had a lot of success. Knocked out Gamzatov at 205. Beat Modestas Bukowskis, a guy who's still winning fights in the UFC at light heavyweight. Beat him by split decision. Got Kimura'd by Jimmy Crute. Jimmy Crute is twice his size. Got Von Flue choked by Open St. Preux in a fight where he was having some success on the feet. And then he beat Gazimurat Antigulov. He beat John Vellante. He, I believe, beat Khalil Rountree. Is that correct? Yeah, Oleksiejczuk won the decision against Khalil Rountree, and then they took it away from him, probably because he was juicing. But in any case, guys, you look at his overall body of work, and I don't think to myself like, man, Oleksiejczuk sucks. I think he's a guy that has a glaring weakness on the ground, and he's trying to do everything in his power to improve it, right? He's gone out to Fighting Nerds. He's putting himself in the gym with a lot of tough guys on his back, putting him in bad situations. And Gerald Meerschaert, right, doesn't have the best wrestling you've ever seen. So normally what he has to do is he has to get into a contentious striking affair where it gets a little bit greasy, and then he starts landing his body kicks, and then the guy starts getting a little bit tired, and he starts feeling it a little bit, and then Gerald's able to get his success going. And I just think that Michal Oleksiejczuk is a guy that's not going to give you a lot of time to get settled into a fight. He's going to come out aggressive, going to try and put hands on you early. And we know that Gerald Meerschaert, guys, even years ago, even when he was a little bit faster, even when his reaction time was a little bit sharper, even when his durability might have been a touch better, he was still getting touched on the chin sometimes and getting one punch knocked out. We saw it with Ian Heinisch. We saw it with Khamzat Chimaev. Both those guys, one big punch sits him down, and that's all that happened. So I think Michal Oleksiejczuk has a big opportunity to come out here and knock out Gerald Meerschaert. And on the other side, guys, I think that Gerald Meerschaert, if he's to win this fight, how does he win it? Like, he probably goes out there and submits this guy because that's GM3's bread and butter. And this guy has been working his whole career to stop getting submitted. So as far as I'm concerned, guys, I lean towards violence. I lean towards unders. I lean towards fight not to go. If you like the GM3 side, I would probably look for late round props. Hope that Oleksiejczuk gets tired. He's able to go out there, look for that submission, maybe the submission late. But ultimately, man, like if GM3 is not able to get takedowns, I think he's going to get he's probably going to get hit with a lot of big shots in the early going. And, at this age, at this stage of the game, 50 fights deep into a career, I think that Michal Oleksiejczuk, his pressure, his power, the Polish power of Husar, I think it's going to be too much, unfortunately, for our guy GM3. Do you see this one differently, my brother?
Yeah, I love GM3, bro. He's a fucking jiu-jitsu legend. At the end of the day, like, the guy doesn't look like he could do much, right? But he finds a way. He's got, like, janky striking that he makes work for him. Like you said, he even competed with RDR, man. But I think this is a tough fight for him, bro. Some guy who's just a really good striker, actually taking things serious now. I believe this is his first, fight with the Fighting Nerds as a full camp, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's really good for his career because if I'm not mistaken, this guy was like training in his garage before. The narrative on him was super low. He wasn't taking his career serious and still wound up, going out there, winning the fight against, I believe it was Dumas, maybe not the highest competition. So people aren't really the highest on him, and especially with his grappling deficiencies. And I understand that, but man, I just think that on the feet, he's going to be too dynamic. He even was competitive with Shara at certain points in that fight. And I think Shara is just so much more of a fast twitch striker, a lot more rangier with the kicks. Gerald's just stiff, chin there to be cracked. And I think he's going to be changing levels here. And I really could see Mikhail even landing a big uppercut on him. That's one of his better strikes that he throws. I'll have to go back and find the fights to reference, but he's really good with that uppercut. I've seen him land it time and time
I'm
again.
95% sure he sent Shamil Gamzatov to the Shadow Realm with an uppercut.
There you go, bro. That might have been it. That might have been the exact fight that I'm thinking of. So yeah, I think he could even land it in the clinch here. Gerald Meerschaert, 37 years old, almost at that 38 mark, where we see guys go out a bit more, and we've seen him put out a few times now. I think that could be the path for Mikey O early here. Even De Ritter, dropped him. Petrosky dropped him. Heineck dropped him. Chimaev put him out cold. Actually, Heineck was the KO. I forgot about that. Pfeiffer was a bad one.
Really bad.
It's just
he's had a couple of instant kill losses via KO in his recent run.
It's tough, bro. So I'm with you on this one. I wanted to maybe disagree. I was hoping you'd be going GM3 with this fucking crazy sub, but it is what it is, bro. I think Husar gets it done, and it's not like he's a super inexperienced guy either. At 30 years of age, 29 fights, Mikhail has been doing the damn thing, and I think this is his time to shine, bro.
I know my guy Dave in the chat is a man after your own heart. He's talking about Meerschaert Von Flu at 100-1. So if y'all are looking for a long shot, that's certainly going to qualify.
That's a good call. That's a good call.
GM3 is a man of many talents.
Dude,
certainly prefers that head and arm choke, that rear naked choke, the guillotine, but he's a man of many talents.
He has 4 of them on record, though, bro.
Somebody else responded that GM3 does not have 4 Von Prus. I would be stunned if he does, but if he does, I would imagine that they're all regional level, right? And that's fine, Let's see.
Okay. But making sure. I'm just making sure.
Ultimately, there are definitely some big numbers on this fight if you steer away from the Oleksiejczuk side, but because I think he's probably going to get it done, one thing I want to do, guys, is real quick, if you can bear with me, I'm going to just pull up the DraftKings prices because I cannot remember. Oh, actually, you know what? I got it in my article. Perfect. Now you're thinking, Liam. Thinking on your feet here, kid. Nicely done. All right, 9,000 is the salary for Oleksiejczuk. Oh, that sucks too. So fuck. We're gonna have to get creative and see how we play Oleksiejczuk, but he probably will find his way into some DraftKings lineups this week. That's one thing I can say.
Definitely.
All right. Next up, my man. Here he is. It's the arrival of Basengor Susurkaev. We talked about, if you guys were tuning in for the stream last week for Contender Series, I was very high on this guy. I liked the ITD. I thought that the sub had value. I thought the rounds 2 and 3 had value. Guys, Murtaza Tala couldn't last 3 minutes with this guy. He ended up getting cleaned up in the very first round. Susurkaev touching him to the head, touching him to the legs, touching him to the body. He sat down. That's the end of the fight. And now, it's funny, guys, because I want to pull up this tweet. And first, what I'm going to do, I'm going to kick it to my brother, Jewish Better. How do you see this one going down? What do you like in this matchup? Basengor Susurkaev against the newcomer, Eric Nolan. He's got some knockouts on the Northeast regional scene, but now he's taking a big step up.
I'm still stuck on the fucking Von Prue choke 4 times. I'm like, where did he get that from? I got to go back and look now. But if that's the case, man, I'll match you at one. I'll go Chase Hooper by Twister, bro. Probably like plus bajillion. Look at that one. So nah, talking about this. Yeah, talking about this fight, man. Eric Nolan, we look at some things about him. He's, 8-3. It's not like he's the most deep in experience, and I've watched some of his fights. So I'll just be honest with you. I'm not impressed with the guy personally. The one aspect I think of his game that you can, shout out is he is a tough guy. He's got, he's never been KO'd in his professional career. And he trains with Dante Rivera, BJJ, and, a staple in the community of Jersey. Obviously think he's training the grappling, but, man, I don't see it in his MMA fights. Like, I think Basengor is going to, destroy him. And that's what the books think as well. We could be seeing, we haven't seen, the grappling necessarily of Basengor. And I've heard some good things in the training room about this guy at Killcliff FC. But he's really a pace guy. They say he's kind of more like a Nate Diaz. So to see him go out there and put this guy Taha out in round one. It's not like he doesn't have round one finishes, but from what I know about this guy, he could be a little bit more of a pace fighter, and he kind of tries to get his reads, adds up volume, and break you as the fight goes along. And like I said, Eric Nolan, a good, tough guy, but I think he's outskilled here. And we could see Baysanger, maybe go into the later part of this fight. I think round one's going to be super juiced. I believe the opener on the over was minus 150, if I'm not mistaken, or the under was minus 150, if I'm not mistaken. And it got cracked pretty heavily. Obviously, lower limits on those. So, shout out to whoever got in on it early. But they're saying maybe this fight could possibly go late. And I don't hate it. Like, we were on the 2-3 the last time. It's possible this one goes later, but I do think at some point in this fight, Eric Nolan is going to get finished. I doubt we get the minus 150 we got versus Taha. And I actually think Taha was a tougher opponent than Nolan. And Nolan's in a tough spot here, coming in only like 4 days notice. Baysanger just had the octagon time. I think this is a really, really tough match for Nolan, and that's where I'm at. Maybe he finds some UFC wins, but I'm not really high on the guy. Watched a couple fights back and didn't really see much that impressed me.
Yeah, man. Listen, I think when you look at both these guys, they come from regional scenes that are worthy of respect. I just think that the difference is Baysanger Susurkaev kind of worked his way up. He's a Dagestani, Chechen guy. He's a guy that has that kind of background, right? And you could see it in how he moves, right? A lot of these guys from Russia are super aggro grapplers, and you know how they're going to approach the fight. They're looking for takedowns. They're coming out shooting aggressively right away. He is the exact opposite, guys. He's not looking to do that. But sometimes the problem with these Russian guys that are pure strikers is they come out there and you start to put them in a wrestling and a grappling match and they panic because they want to be on the feet. And so if they can't get their, first layer submission, if they can't, get that space back and get you off them, they start to really panic and they start to, use a lot of energy. I think that the thing that I love the most about Baysanger Susurkaev, guys, he's extremely calm in the fight. He's out there with a smile on his face. He's out there with a lot of, looseness to how he moves his body. And the guy keeps a pretty low stance, hands a little bit lower, but he's got good reaction time. He's moving his head side to side. He's bringing it forward and back. And he's also a guy that's not afraid of you grabbing a hold of him. One of the things that Du Plessis talked about in the main event is he's like, listen, I know this guy Chimaev is going to come take me down. Susurkaev knows guys do not want to strike with me, period. So I go out there and I try and keep them at length. I try and keep them back. I use my jab, use my long teeps to the body. I try and discipline these guys, use my low kicks, keep them at a distance that I feel very comfortable with. But if they close down the range on me, I'm not afraid of that. I know that it's coming. I know that they want to do that to me. So he's willing to grab an overhook, start looking for short shots. He's willing to dig back inside for his underhooks, push you back to the fence, look for a couple knees to the body. He tries to punish you for making those attempts, for getting close to him. And the thing that I really liked about his game, and I did talk about this before the Contender Series, I think number one, he is a builder, man. You watch his 15-minute fight, he's building into the fight over time. He's landing his low kicks. He's landing shots to all levels of the body. That chips away at people over time. He's a guy that competes comfortably at 185 pounds. Eric Nolan, on the other hand, guys, is a 170-pound champ in CFFC. So he's coming up on short notice, 15 pounds, and he's going to be fighting this guy. And I think that Eric Nolan has a trait that serves you really well in regional MMA. It serves you really well in fights where you can win, which is you go out there and he swings hard. He takes chances on the feet. He's willing to go in there and mix it up. But when you saw him go against Ty Miller early in his career, he got outdone by a guy who's a little bit cleaner with the strikes, a little bit more, precise with his actions, a guy who made better deliberate decisions on the feet. And I think when you look at Susurkaev, he has a lot of power, but he's also a guy that can apply that same craft with a little bit of 75% to 85% intensity over the course of 15, maybe even 25 minutes. So I look at Baysanger Susurkaev as a guy that still needs to show us a little bit more, right? I'd like to see him do it against these higher level opponents. I thought Taha was going to be an easy fight for him, but I thought Taha might have some success in round one. I thought he might get to shoot a takedown. I thought he might get to mix it up a little bit. Susurkaev had none of that. He came out there and smoked him. So when you look at how these two guys match up, I think Susurkaev is a guy that's ready for prime time right now. And I think Nolan still needs a little bit more seasoning. I think he'll do better at 170 pounds than up at this weight class. He's given up 5 inches of reach, even though they're at height parity. He's going to be getting touched from far away. He's going to be getting touched to the breadbasket. He's going to be getting touched to the legs. And I think Eric Nolan's best attribute is his powerful hands. I think if you kick the legs out from underneath this guy, it's going to take away a lot of what makes him special on the feet. And then I don't really think that he's going to have the opportunity to out-grapple this guy easily on the mat. Murtaza Tallah, guys, had experience at 205 pounds. These guys that he's fighting, he's fought some big guys. And these guys normally have a difficult time taking him down. If they get him down, they have a very difficult time holding him down. He's wrestling back into guys. He's grappling back into guys, getting to the top position, getting to their back. So I don't think that Basinger or Susurkaev is like, hey, you know what? This guy's so good on the feet, but if you just take him to the ground, he's a mark. I don't see it that way. I think that he's a good fighter in multiple positions. And I think that if his cardio holds up, I think that if his, if he does not experience UFC jitters, I think he's going to absolutely torch this guy and probably finish him in rounds 2 or 3. And that's the way I see it going down. So hats off to Eric Nolan, man. He stepped up on short notice. He took this fight. He's a gangster for that. But I also got to acknowledge, he got submitted by, a guy on the regional scene. He's been, finished before. He's been in a couple close decisions, even in ones where he's won. So I think that Nolan is a decent enough fighter, a solid enough guy. I just think Basinger is a level above. So for me, I think Basinger is going to finish him. And I said last time I was high on Basinger ITD. And if I was, trying to cap it out, I'd be slightly less high on it this time because I do think that Nolan is not as guaranteed to gas as a guy like Taha was. But I do think that Nolan's going to take a shellacking in this fight if it goes 15 minutes. So I think more often than not, Susurkaev is going to finish this guy and look like $1 million. So, all right, brother. We're on to the main card. We got 5 left. Let's do it in earnest, guys. We got Tim Elliott taking on Kai Asakura. And me and you talked a little bit about this fight, my brother. It's a fun one. It's an interesting one. Tim Elliott has been a little bit inactive lately. He got the win via submission against Sumudarji and then kind of disappeared for a bit. And meanwhile, Kai Asakura, we all know, right? He's coming off the title fight loss, made a decent account of himself against Pantoja, just was levels above in terms of the grappling, right? Pantoja was able to get him to the mat multiple times. He responded well early. As the fight started to wear on in round 2, he was able to get that opportunity, never let him off the hook. Pantoja, special athlete, special champion, got the win. So now here we are, right? It's an interesting fight. It's a fun fight. Awkward MMA, Tim Elliott, a guy that at his best has, really given guys that are good fighters fits. But at his worst, he's made really boneheaded decisions, put his head in the wrong place, gotten tapped by guys that, he probably shouldn't. And, again, at his best, he was competing close for a UFC title with Demetrius Johnson. So Tim Elliott's an interesting character in MMA, period. And Kai Asakura was a special talent coming over. The UFC tried to put him right into a huge opportunity. And we know he's got knockout power. We know that he's a dangerous fellow on the feet. He comes in great shape aesthetically. He looks like he's, got a very solid body composition. So for all those reasons, man, I'm excited about this fight. What do you think of this one?
I'm actually excited for this one as well. The things that we're not really high on Tim Elliott is 38 years old, almost 39, coming off a 2-year layoff. And, last fight was at 135, short notice, I believe, for him. He came in, I believe it was supposed to be, who was it? Sumadarzi was supposed to fight, I believe, Alan Nascimento, which would have been probably a terrible matchup for him.
Bro, Alan Nascimento would have submitted that guy so quick, your head would spin.
So now you get Tim Elliott, who comes out there and does the same thing. But now it's like you got to make that 120-pound weight class. I don't think he's going to have trouble doing it. But now you coming off a knee surgery, what's a lot harder to do is that cardio, right? Is that running. And that's what makes Tim Elliott so good is he gets in these grimy fights. He can outlast people, and he just makes it dirty, ugly, comes in there to grapple. And on the other side, I think Kai Asakura is going to have a crazy speed advantage. We know guys, as they get older, 38 years old, get knocked out a little bit more. So it is possible the durability goes for Elliott, but he's never been, KO'd in the UFC level. I don't even know if he's been dropped, to be honest. But Kai is a dangerous striker. He's got those knees up the middle as well, which I know he's very capable to land here. No soccer kicks, but he still is a very dangerous striker. And talk about a tough UFC debut. I mean, he even showed some decent stuff there where he was able to get back to the feet, defend some of the grappling from Pantoja. And we know Pantoja is just levels above Elliott at this point in his career. And That's the thing, and it's not like Kai Asakura. I don't know if he's a complete bum on the mat because we looked a little bit into him, and purple belt in jiu-jitsu, that doesn't sound terrible, bro. I believe he's definitely training with some good guys. Looking into it, high-level jiu-jitsu black belts that he's training with, so he's prepared, and the UFC is going to keep giving this guy grapplers until he proves he can, defend it at this level. And I think Tim Elliott's path here is to get this fight to the ground, expose a hole that Kai Asakura has been exposed to before, albeit at a high level, the highest level. And it's a tough one. I may look for violence here. I know people are talking about the fight goes, but I think Kai's live to hurt him. I think Tim could, maybe get this fight to the ground, expose him on the ground, submit him. We've seen Tim Elliott, grind people out. And I think, Kai on the other end could possibly wrap up a neck. We've seen Tim Elliott submitted multiple times at the UFC level. And if we're looking at flyweight just in general, the end sub rate is a lot more than the KO. So I would look at even a long shot on the Kai Asakura, maybe via sub market. I haven't looked to play it, but I like that. I like the end sub. I like violence in general here because I also think, Kai could just fucking knock him the fuck out on the feet. And that's the most likely path. So, but that's what the books think. I like violence here in general. Old man who I think has to submit his opponent to win the fight.
Yeah, I'm looking right now and I'm seeing like very affordable chalk on the fight not to go the distance, like -102, -105 type of thing. And meanwhile, you look at the ITD price for Asakura, best available is like +140. So I'd rather sacrifice 40 cents on the line personally and give myself any Tim Elliott submission equity than getting cute personally. But everybody to each their own. Approach how you want. That's just one long-term like angle thought process that I have is like, I'd rather give up a little bit of equity in this kind of case and give myself, a chance to win on both athletes. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind. All right, next up, brother, we got a very interesting fight. And I was surprised with the face-off here. Did you happen to catch these two guys facing off, my man?
No, I didn't see it, but I always loved Jared Cannonier. Super intense guy. So I can only imagine.
Dude, MVP is just fucking huge, right? Like you could see it on the height, and reach. MVP is the one coming up in weight, right? Jared Cannonier, guys, competed at heavyweight, 265 pounds when he first got to the UFC. And now you're seeing him come in here. He's 41 years of age against a 38-year-old in MVP. So what do we know? Both these guys are past that precipice where, they might start getting knocked out at a higher rate, something to keep in the back of our minds. Also worth considering, MVP, extremely dangerous striker, right? Very potent there. Jared Cannonier, also a pretty big power threat, right? A guy that hits with a lot of force, has knockouts in the UFC, has hurt guys like Robert Whittaker, sent him flying with that head kick. So both these guys have real power, and there's a little bit of a size disparity. Both these guys are up there in age. I don't really know exactly how to get a good feel for this fight, man. You see Jared Cannonier. Somebody asked me earlier today on Twitter, they're like, bro, do you think Jared's going to wrestle in this fight or not? And I was like, I have no fucking clue. Like, Jared Cannonier against Israel Adesanya basically decided, like, I'm going to cage push this guy for my life, right? Then you look at, in some of his other fights, he's willing to go out there and trade on the feet and make it a back and forth war, throw 200 strikes against Sean Strickland. Like Jared Cannonier, he's not a bad fighter, man. You look at the guys he's been losing to. I think every guy he's lost to in the last 5 years is ranked in the top 6 at middleweight, something like that off the top of my head. Like the guy has been pretty impressive. And on the other side, Michael Venom Page, he's been pretty good since he got to the UFC. He's been beating guys a little bit less experienced than a guy like Jared, or maybe a little bit less accomplished in this middleweight division. Guys like Kevin Holland, he got the win there. He lost a close split decision to Ian Gary. That's an impressive look. Ian Gary, I think, is 9-1 in the UFC, again, off the top of my head. So both these guys have a pretty impressive resume, but Michael Venom Page is the bigger athlete. I think he's the faster athlete. And I also think he's got a little bit less miles on him in terms of damaging strikes that he's taken. He's been a little bit more efficient with how much damage he's taken, right? He got one bad knockout against what's his name?
Douglas Lima.
Yeah, Lima kicked the legs out from under him. And that was impressive, right? But then you look and it's like, other than that, man, nobody's really hurt Michael Venom Page very easily. He's a difficult guy to land cleanly on. And he's a guy that has really devastating power as well. He gets respect from a lot of guys on the feet, takes tricky angles, hard to hit. So for all those reasons, man, I'm slightly leaning towards MVP, but I'm not very bullish on it. You know, like I think it's a super competitive fight, and I could see either guy getting knocked out. What do you think about this one, man?
Yeah, maybe I'm tripping, but I'm a huge Cannonier fan. I think this is a very tough fight for him in the sense that MVP, especially in the big cage, if you're not able to wrestle this guy, we've seen is Jared going to wrestle? He probably will because Michael Page turns people into wrestlers. And I've seen Cannonier hurt multiple times on the feet ever since the Derek Brunson fight. I've seen him get dropped there. And then the Barala one was really bad. Multiple times he's been hurt.
Insane non-stoppage, by the way. I've literally laughed at that a million times watching that back. He gets the soul punched out of him, and Herb Dean's like, "Move, fighter!" Like,
man, at the end of the day, bro, I just think like Michael Page is one of the people that I don't really want to be betting against. Like his style is just, it's tough to deal with from an MMA perspective because he's so good at countering guys. His reads that he makes are cream of the crop. On the other end, I could see Jared landing leg kicks here. I know it's been talked about, but that is one of his best weapons. He has a good uppercut up the middle that he connected with on Hermanson. Try to level change on this guy, puts you down. And I always love the MMA lab. They do have good game planning. Maybe he could cage push MVP here, but like MVP's been dealing with this his whole career, man. It's not like he's never seen a guy who could wrestle like Jared Cannonier, and I just don't think Jared Cannonier is an amazing wrestler at the end of the day. It's not like he's got the crazy top control. If he does get on top of you, he will land vicious ground and pound, and that is one of the best parts about Jared Cannonier's game. He plays for keeps. I believe it was Derek Brunson where he hit him with the back fist and then gets him to the ground, elbows from the side control, and the towel comes in, bro. Absolutely brutal, vicious. So if you want to mess around with this dude Cannonier, he can put your lights out. He can hurt you. So MVP's got to be careful, but I think his defensive striking is just way too elite. I think it's some of the best the UFC's ever seen, and I think we see Michael Venom Page get the win here, man.
We see it the same way then, brother. I will say, though, I respect Jared. I've bet Jared as an underdog before. I've thought highly of him. So, Jared's a guy that is a tough out for anybody. Somebody asked in the chat about Cannonier takedown ladder, and him to get one takedown is plus 130. That I do think is very interesting. Like, I think there's many worlds in which Jared Cannonier loses this fight and gets one takedown. So I think that's certainly an interesting way to look at it. The one thing I will note, though, guys, is there's been a couple times where Jared Cannonier got hurt really bad early in a fight. I think Whitaker hurt him, if my memory serves, and he had to kind of like get back under himself. I think that
he broke his arm in that fight with a head kick, I think, bro. It was bad because, and that's the thing, is he blocked it, but he didn't reinforce his block, and he broke his arm. Crazy.
Yeah, dude. But also, I'm trying to think back. If you look back at his resume, Gregory Rodriguez hurt him bad early in that fight. Marvin Vettori, guys, not known for having power. He's actually known for not having power. He hurt him in that fight early on. I don't think Izzy hurt him. Derek Brunson, guys, did hurt him in the early going.
Bad, like, bro.
I had 7.5 units on Jared Cannonier because if there's one thing I felt like I knew, it was Derek Brunson fights, man. I was very good at picking his fights. But even in that one, bro, he gave me a big scare. And Jared came through. He did his job. He came back and did what he needed to do. But at 41, the rallies, the ability to come back from getting hurt early, it does start to dissipate a little bit. And MVP tends to have a little bit more of that style that can age a little bit better, right? Where he's picking his shots. He's a little bit more elusive. But if he just gets out physicaled in the clinch, that won't surprise me, man. Because you do have a guy who's a former welterweight, right? A guy who made his best fights of his career at welterweight, taking on a guy who has fought at 205, 265, and now 185 is one of the bigger guys in the division. So Jared Cannonier, if anybody still has the juice at 41, he showed last time out against RoboCop. He'll still walk you down. He'll still make it a battle. He'll still give you everything that he's got for the full 15 or 25 minutes that he's called upon. But I do think it's a tough matchup for him. So ultimately, I'm going with MVP. KO decision.
Jared Cannonier and Drakkar Klose are coming in here with the cage push special, bro. The MMA Lab Mario Batista special, bro. But we'll see, man.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think that this should be fun, man. This should be fun. And wanted to just say shout out to Dixon. He said he's got us that one takedown. Last week, guys, Eric Anders we talked about a little bit, like, man, maybe he could go out there and mix in some takedowns. He cashed the 1+ takedown at plus money right before he got sparked. What a fucking gentleman he is. So shout out to Eric Anders for that. And maybe Jared Cannonier can do the same this week. And that's a way to, buy into, hey, Jared's still physical. He's strong. He's going to come out here shooting takedowns. But then you get off he needs to win this fight, right? Like, it gives you that equity to say, hey, I could still win, get a plus 120, a plus 130 on his takedown. And then I don't need to guarantee that this 41-year-old can take the shots, right? So just something to think about. All right, folks, here we go. We got Jeff Neal taking on Carlos Prates, and this should be a fun fight. I'm going to kick it right to my guy, Jewish Better. How do you feel about this one, my man? Two guys that are both looking for a big win to get back on track in this welterweight division in terms of where their standing is for a title shot. We saw Carlos Prates lose. We've seen Jeff Neal lose to most of the best guys in the division, very few else. How do you see it going down?
Fuck, man. I wanted to bet Jeff Neal here as an underdog, but the more and more I just harp on it, like, I think Carlos Prates just has a little bit more weapons with the low kicks, with the knees, with the elbows. I think, like, on the feet, Jeff Neal's a great pocket boxer, but I don't see why Carlos can't keep this at range, keep it at the, space he wants it, and, just sit on the outside and snipe Neal off. I know people talk about the fight with Trevin Giles, but I think he was just looking for the kill shot there personally. Like, he knew that at some point he's going to connect on this guy, put him away, and he got what he wanted. He's very long. He's got good distance management as well, high fight IQ on the feet, and I don't see Neal putting him on his back. So, yeah, Neal could sit here. It could be a 15-minute fight where Neal boxes with him, but I think if anybody gets finished here, personally, I know Neal's been tough to finish historically, but Carlos is just so dangerous, and he's so good at finding the finish. Even in the 5th round against Ian Gary, where, Gary was winning the fight, he still had that dangerous moment in round 5, and that proved a lot where people were questioning this guy's cardio, and he showed there in a 5-round fight that he can go 25 hard minutes. So I don't, worry about his cardio. 15-minute fight here. Neal, has been finished late in fights before, so I think Carlos could maybe, be in a close fight early. It is a tough veteran in Jeff Neal, and he has great boxing, like I said, but I think as this fight goes on, Carlos is going to get his reads. He's going to pick it up, and I think he hurts him bad here. Maybe even finds the finish, but I lean decision. What do you think?
One thing that I just want to look at from a UFC stats perspective, I'm going to pull this up on the screen so everybody can see it with us. So here, I'm going to show this now. Jeff Neal, guys, looked like a absolute world beater when he beat up on Vicente Luque. The guy, his ability to fight the southpaw stance, pretty impressive, right? He's got that brutal left uppercut. He's got power in his hands. But the one thing about Jeff Neal, guys, that I think we got to take note of when we come back to the Tapology page, 3-inch reach advantage for Carlos Prates in this matchup. He's also going to be dealing with the height advantage as well, 6'1" compared to 5'11". And Prates is also 3 years younger. So what does that mean? He's got every anthropomorphic advantage in this fight. And when you look at Jeff Neal, this is a guy that has had, some tough runs, right? Like, he's fought good fighters, no doubt about that. But let's talk about, where he's at in his career and maybe why I'm not as bullish on him, right? So he's 34 years of age, guys. He's talked about before, he still works a job as a waiter to stay out of trouble because it keeps him grounded in life. There's nothing wrong with that, right? He's doing his thing. But let's go back and look at the actual resume. He beat RDA. I felt disgusting about that, right? Like, RDA just got injured, and it was like RDA fell apart due to old age. I really don't take much away from that fight.
Bro. On
exactly.
Birthday. Oh.
Couldn't be worse, right? He loses a split decision against Ian Gary. I thought he lost that fight. I thought Ian Gary won that fight. I thought he won the rounds there, but ultimately close enough fight, fair enough. Then you look at the Shavkat fight, and, he did some decent work in the Shavkat fight. He landed some decent punches in the Shavkat fight. But, we saw Shavkat kind of rely on that youth, that durability, that enthusiasm, and he was able to stick it out and then finish him in the 3rd round, right? Use his size, his leverage in that fight as a major contributing factor as well. The knockout over Vicente Luque, that was impressive, right? It was a great win. But I actually picked Luque in that fight. I picked Jeff Neal in that fight. I thought he was going to beat Luque because I thought he could target him with the southpaw attacks, and that's exactly what happened, man. He was susceptible. You saw Bilal Muhammad fight him in orthodox, get his ass whooped. You saw Bilal Muhammad switch stances, fight him in southpaw, beat his ass. So Vicente Luque basically had a hole in his game. Guys figured it out. They tape studied him. And they exploited it. And I think Jeff Neal, took advantage of that, right? He went to split decision in 2021 with Santiago Ponzinibbio. And that guy has kind of been washed since 2021, with all due respect, right? You look back, he lost to Neil Magny, guys. I bet Stephen Wonderboy Thompson at like minus 110 or something. And that was like, back in the days when I was first getting into this stuff, I was like, man, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, he's going to style on this dude at distance. He beat the shit out of that guy for 5 full rounds. I think maybe he lost 1 round in between. Maybe. Neil Magny kind of just put him in the Magnyverse, right? Out hustled him, out clinched him, put him against the fence, made him make bad decisions. So you kind of look at his run. He beat Mike Perry, he beat Nico Price. The win over Bilal Muhammad, that's fucking sensational, right? But he just hasn't been on that same kind of level since, right? His only real win of that ilk since then is the Vicente Luque win. And most of what he's been doing since 2020 is losing fights, and pulling out of fights and not making it to fights. So ultimately, you look on the other side, and this is Carlos Prates' resume in the UFC, guys. He went out there and he lost to Ian Gary, but he did make a good account of himself there. He lost the rounds, but he came back to almost finish Ian Gary. Ian Gary's 9-1 in the UFC, right? I think he came closer to finishing Ian Gary than anybody else, except maybe Song Kanan, right? Then you look at Neil Magny. He was able to go out there and destroy that guy in the first round, right? Common opponent. You look at the Li Jingliang fight, destroyed that guy. First guy to ever knock him out, I believe. Charles Radke killed that guy with a knee up the middle, never gave him a chance. Trevin Giles put him in the absolute box. That was a competitive fight in the first round. He just put him in the box to start round 2. Mitch Ramirez went out there and crushed him as well. So, man, I don't think that he's fought the same level of opposition, broadly speaking, but I do think that Carlos Prates is just a guy that's ready for prime time right now. And even back in the day, right, when Jeff Neal was fighting regionally, guys, he got knocked out by Kevin Holland. What does Kevin Holland have? He's got length. He's got a little bit of that awkward ability to move and be a little faster on the outside, pick you away with the jab, pick you away with straights, land some big kicks, and do it all with power and snapping shots. And I do think that is the difference maker here for a guy like Carlos Prates. I think both these guys are solid strikers. If it goes to a decision, maybe it's anybody's ball game. I think that's fair. But I think that more often than not, the dangerous guy in this matchup, the guy with more chances to finish, is Carlos Prates. And for that reason, I'm going to pick him to get the win. But it's all respect. Jeff Neal is a guy that shows up, fights hard. Even against the guys he's lost to, he's given a good account of himself. But I think Carlos Prates is just too fast, too technical on the feet, and too aggressive. I think Jeff Neal, if you have to criticize again, how does he lose some of these decisions? He doesn't do enough, right? He kind of just lets the fight slip by him and, watches for a little bit and doesn't throw enough. And his corner's always yelling at him, right? Getting on him, trying to get him to throw more. Carlos Prates, I think, he can pick his shots at times as well, but I think he's a lot more devastating when he does find the mark, typically speaking. And Jeff Neal, he had that at one point in the UFC. Could he recapture it? Maybe, but at 34, I don't really see it. Meanwhile, Carlos Prates, I think, has been showing his best form to date, even in a loss to Ian Gary. So for that reason, I'm going with Prates. Anything else to add before we move to the next fight, brother?
No, I was just gonna say, like, you talk about the southpaw stance for Jeff Neal, and I think that's a good point, and he can use that to his advantage in boxing. But we look at Carlos Prates on the other end, a guy who switches stances very well, and he's very fluid with it. When he switches stances, it's not like you can tell. He blends it very well with his striking, and I think that's something that people underestimate about him. So keep an eye out for that, because I think if things start to get bad in the orthodox stance for him, he feels he needs to switch, he'll go to that, and that's just something extra that Jeff Neal has to think about. Whereas, Jeff Neal, he just strictly fights out of that southpaw stance, and Carlos is going to be able to prepare for that. And like I said, it's just a lot of weapons I think that Neal has to worry about in this spot, whereas Carlos maybe just has to worry about the hands.
I think we are largely on the same page, and Jeff Neal, the other weapon that was like a huge factor for him early in his UFC career was that head kick, right? I think he head kicked Mike Perry when Mike Perry was extremely difficult to put away, but it's going to be very hard to head kick somebody who's 6'1", right? So that for me is something that I think is worth, being cognizant of, right? All right, guys, next up we have the co-main event of the evening. I'm going to kick it to my brother, Jewish Better. How do you feel about Lerone, the Miracle Murphy, at 34 years of age, could potentially be fighting to get into that #1 contender fight, if not a title fight at 145 pounds? On the other side, Aaron Pico. He's a guy that I've been rooting for since he was a wrestler, right? I've been a fan of Aaron Pico since he was out there trying to prove that at 19 years of age, he was good enough to go to the Olympics. He was just this close, guys, at that age, and he decided, you know what, I'm all in on MMA. Did he make the best career decisions? No, he was a bullheaded kid. He was aggressive. He wanted to get the toughest fights right out of the gate. They gave him a guy who was like 9-3 and twice his size in his first pro fight on TV. Absolutely insane decision-making, but Aaron Pico has been humbled by the process, right? He's a guy that went through some ups and downs, some trials and tribulations outside the UFC. He's still 28 years of age, guys. He's in his physical prime right now, Lord willing. Aaron Pico still has his best years ahead of him, and he signed to the UFC. Unlike a lot of these Bellator transplants that signed in their mid-30s, this guy's getting over here at the right time, in my opinion. Jewish Better, what do you think of this matchup? I'm very excited to see how it goes down. I'm very excited to see what your thoughts are on a competitive matchup.
Yeah, dude, this is a fucking banger, bro. I like Aaron Pico a hell of a ton. He's super explosive, a guy who mixes his level changes very well with his, hands. You have to worry about the takedown, and he'll get you worried about, throwing, pressure you. You try to, strike back, counter, and that's when he times his takedowns, and he's very good at doing so. The one knock I will say on him is that, I don't think he has the greatest control in the world. I do think that Lerone Murphy could build himself back up in this fight, get his whizzer. We've seen him, taken down in the UFC before, but it's not like the guy struggles to get back up. I think he's got good process, especially up against the cage, and this will be in the bigger cage. So a guy like Lerone Murphy, we've seen, he can fight on the front foot. We've seen him do that against Barbosa when he needs to, but also we've seen the guy, be able to, finesse his way around the octagon, land at distance. And I think he's very good at distance management here, which is going to be important. The thing is, he's got to find a way to not bite on these level changes and not get hit with the overhand right. I'm not saying that's all Pico is, but I think that's going to be super important since that's the bread and butter of his game. Now, there's a few ways he could do that. We've seen him land the knee against Makwan. That's something that he could do. I also think that there's a possibility that he gets back up to the feet if he is taken down, keeps it at range. He also has a good front choke series that I think people don't really notice. He attacked Darce's Anacondas against Kulabau. If you leave your head out, Tukagov, even in his UFC debut, this guy's going for ninja chokes, going for guillotines. He forced Tukagov to flat back himself multiple times. So that is something I did want to mention. I think he could throw that in here. Pico's going to have to be very careful with his head placement, and I think he will be. He's gotten a lot better at it. We saw his first career loss against Cody Freeman. Guy put him in a guillotine, had the tap. That's a wrestler's mistake, right? I think he's gotten a lot better since then. He's 28 years old now. Ton of experience, but it's like against who, right? Like the guy's definitely fought the lesser competition in Bellator, while Lerone Murphy's over here in the UFC, and I think that has to count for something, especially with the nerves. This is the biggest fight of both guys' career. I think both guys are going to be taken extremely serious. It's not like Lerone Murphy's ever lost in the UFC. Undefeated. I think he's really fucking good too, bro. His distance management and the way he uses his feints. He's very educated with his feints. He is a guy who is a tactician, and he's going to force, I think, some big strikes at Aaron Pico, and I think he can land here. I think Pico's a hell of a talent. I think he's got dangerous power. I think he could hurt Murphy. We've seen Murphy drop before in the octagon. On the other side, I could think Aaron Pico, all four losses via the finish. And the books are rating this fight to go, I believe it's, what's the fight doesn't go the distance? If you can pull that up for me.
Absolutely. I'll check right now, my man. We've got, right now, the fight not to go the distance prop is sitting at plus 150 over at Bet Online. And I'm seeing it's pretty similar across the market. I'm seeing as best as plus 163, as low as plus 144.
And I think most of that equity is like Pico KO. I get it, but they're like really rating that high. I don't think Lerone Murphy's a complete, nothing burger in the finish. People have shitted on the guy because, he hasn't gotten finishes at the UFC level. But, man, I think the guy's got low-key, sneaky power. He finds his right hand very well. Like I said, the knees are something you have to worry about. Likely it goes to decision, and if it does, I think it's going to be close. But man, Leron Murphy ITD at like plus 6xx, I think is live, Liam, and call me crazy, bro. Leron Murphy by sub, 28-1 on DraftKings. I think he could catch him.
Fair play, my brother. I do think that this fight is very volatile. I'll lead off with that. With Aaron Pico, guys, what you have to do is a little bit of like projecting talent, right? Like trying to understand like how talented is this guy, and you're using incomplete information. Here's the things that I think are important to know, right? Aaron Pico does have a serious background in boxing. He was a Golden Gloves boxing champ. Some guys, that's like their claim to fame coming into MMA, right? I was a Golden Gloves boxer, right? Then you look at Aaron Pico. He was also wrestling for world and Olympic team spots when he was 18 and 19 years of age. He forewent his college experience in order to compete for world and Olympic titles. He did it at the age level, right? So under 17, under 20 world level championships for wrestling. And then he competed for the Olympic team, right? Tried to get onto the team, ended up being on the national team, but he did not make it to that world team that goes to the Olympics. He lost in the finals there as a 19-year-old. So Aaron Pico was essentially a top level wrestling prospect, considered a future world champion across the board. And then he decided, I want to, focus all my attention on MMA. And when you look at this guy, Aaron Pico, he takes a lot of risks, right? If you have to just say like, what is his defining attribute as a fighter? He is a risk-taking son of a gun. And that's why he's got finish wins. And that's also why he's got finish losses, right? The thing that, scares me, somebody did point it out in the chat, and I want to bring that up on screen. Shout out to the sharpest chat in the game. Appreciate you guys each and every time. My guy Tristan in the chat said, Pico 100% liable to suffer a shoulder issue again. That for me is the biggest concern. If you watch the Jeremy Kennedy fight, guys, it's pretty clear that Pico early in that fight suffered an injury, and then he was unable to fight like himself at all. He's a tough bastard, right? Like he's not a guy that's trying to quit on himself out there, right? The reason he has finished losses is because he is super aggressive. He's willing to take chances. That can get you clipped. That can get you caught. That can get you put in bad positions. But also, he had that injury, right? And that's something that you never know when it's going to rear its ugly head again. So the prospect of land chalk, it can be a little tough, right? The thing that I like for Aaron about this matchup, though, is that I think Aaron pushes a very high pace on his opponents. I don't want people to take this the wrong way, because I'm not saying he's proven as much as a guy like Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. But if you guys watch Fluffy grapple, his priority is not holding people on the ground. It's making them work. It's making them use energy, and it's doing damage to them. That's what Fluffy's out there to do. So he tries to get weight on guys' hands, but he also throws knees to the body, and he also pushes down on their head, and he sits to these halfway guillotines. And what he's doing is trying to put you through a cycle that makes you really tired so you can't do it anymore. And then he makes you quit and he breaks you, right? And Pico tries to do something very similar, but he just doesn't use as much jiu-jitsu as Fluffy. Fluffy's a jiu-jitsu guy that has a wrestling ability, and Aaron Pico's a wrestler that has some jiu-jitsu abilities, right? So my guy JB was talking about maybe Lerone Murphy could even be sneaky. I don't think he's submitted anybody as a professional, but he does attempt them. He does at least mix in those front headlocks and those attempts. For the most part, guys, Aaron Pico's a guy that's looking to hurt people wherever the fight is. If he's on the feet, he's looking to throw big hammers to the body, to the head, and put you away with those shots. He's looking to uppercut you in the chin. He's looking to take big shots to the side of your head and your temples. He's looking to go to your ribs. He's looking to go to your liver, your belly, and put you down. And that's what he's trying to do when he's on the feet. Now, when he backs people up to the cage, he mixes in those takedowns. He also mixes in the ground and pound. So as guys are standing back up, it's short shots to the head, it's shots to the body, it's knees to the body as well. Aaron Pico is a guy that has built a game for himself that relies on, I could take you down a bunch of times if I need to. I could beat you up on the fence if I need to, and I'm willing to throw hands with you and find out who's the tougher guy who can throw and land bigger shots. Now, it hasn't always worked out for him, but he's 28 years of age. His experience is now starting to come into his own, right? Got a similar amount of fights as Lerone Murphy. Now, I do think it's important to note, Lerone Murphy has fought the better quality of competition. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But Lerone is also 34 years old. He's also taking this fight on short notice. He's also got 2 UFC knockdowns for, 2 UFC knockdowns against. He hasn't been the most explosive guy. He hasn't been the most dynamic finisher at all times. I'll remind people, Makwan Amirkhani dominated him physically in the grappling, absolutely owned him for the first 5 minutes, came back out, shot a takedown, and got kneed right in the face. So again, Lerone Murphy's had shown an ability to weather a storm, come back from it, rally. but I've also seen him taken down by Dan Ige. I've seen him taken down by this guy, that guy in the third. And I'll just tell you, Aaron Pico is a phenomenal wrestler. He always has been. And his wrestling in MMA, in my opinion, has gotten better over time based on the fights I've watched. In a lot of his recent fight film, he's going out there, shooting a bunch of takedowns, getting on top of guys and trying to beat them up. And when they stand back up, he throws heavy shots and then goes for another takedown. And if he does that in this fight, I think it's a winnable fight for him. I think he has the ability to make Lerone Murphy dance to his beat, fight his fight, and he could take him down over and over, beat him up a little bit, and land some shots. On the other side, Lerone Murphy, guys, has grown up in the UFC. He's earned his keep, right? He's 8-0-1 in the promotion. That doesn't happen by accident. He's a winner. He's a gamer. He's a tough son of a bitch. I compared Aaron Pico to Josh Emmett. Somebody had said, yo, Josh Emmett's a wrestler with power, and look what we did to him. And I was like, y'all don't know the difference in wrestling between Josh Emmett and Aaron Pico in terms of their credentials, right? But as an MMA fighter, Josh is the more accomplished guy. He is the UFC lifer. He's done those things. So I look at this fight and say, for me, it looks like an honest fight on paper. But you've got the guy who's got, 6 years of youth on his side here with a similar amount of experience. And I think if you said, who's the better wrestler for wrestling's sake, I think it's Aaron Pico. I think he can get to the takedowns here when he needs to. And I think that on the feet, it's an honest fight. The one thing I don't hear a lot of people talking about this week is that Lerone Murphy, for a guy that is tough and hard to put away and a winning fighter, he gets hurt a lot, guys. He got hurt bad by Dan Ige. Bad. He got hurt badly. Let's go back through it. He got hurt by Dan Ige. He got hurt by Edson, if my memory serves. I honestly can't remember.
I don't remember the Edson one. I think he might have got hurt by Josh Coolabell, unless I'm crazy.
Dude, I think he got dropped by Josh Coolabell. Let me go back to the UFC stats.
I think he dropped Coolabell with a body kick, but I think he also might have got hurt early in that fight. I think Tukagov.
Fair play. Tukagov definitely dropped him. That I know for sure. He also got dropped by Dan Ige, who dropped him officially. But
right.
I think he got buzzed by Josh Coolabell. I think he might have got buzzed by Gabriel Santos, if my memory serves.
And taken down 5 times.
Yeah, man. So you look at these things, and it's like Josh Emmett, 4 takedowns. Those guys are all good fighters. Like Lerone Murphy's fighting good fighters. He's not fighting scrubs. But he's showing that you could take him down, and you could land big shots on his chin that could affect his equilibrium and his ability to keep fighting. And the same thing is true for Aaron Pico, right? You could hurt him, but Aaron Pico can hurt people, man. He can thump. He can land big shots. He can get people's respect. He takes people off their feet with his power on regular occasion. And then on the ground, I think he could wrestle, get control. And could he get subbed? Like, I think it's possible, especially if he has a cardio dump or something. But, like, barring that, dude, like, I just think that Aaron Pico has a strong will to win, man. You're going to have to kill this guy. Even if you look at that shoulder injury, he's trying to talk the doctor. Like my boy Blake Perry, guys, had his nose splattered to the other side of his face one time. And he's just trying to reason with the referee, like, no, please let me go back out there. And everybody else watching at home is like, no, sir, we can't let you do that, right? Aaron Pico, his shoulder is completely out of its socket. And he's trying to explain to the doctor, no, I'm fine. Let me compete. He wants to go back out there with one arm and fight Jeremy Kennedy because that's who Aaron Pico is at his core. He's a competitor. Down to it. So I think that these are 2 guys that both know a lot about winning. I think these are both very good fighters. Won't be having money on this one. But I told you guys, I thought Patchy Mix and Mario Bautista should be like an honest pick'em. And I'm just a huge Patchy Mix guy and I'm biased as fuck. I'm going to disclose my biases right now. Can I get a drum roll, please? My brother, Jewish Better.
Oh, shit.
Since 2016 in the making, Aaron Pico to the UFC. Dethrone Wrestling, baby. USA Wrestling. We here. One more chance. Fuck PFL-ator. One more chance. Aaron Pico, go out there and do it for your country, young man. Go out there and do it for your country. Aaron Pico, motherfuckers. We got the t-shirt and everything. Let's go.
And not like, I know I made a bullish case for Murphy. It's just a line to me at the end of the day, man. I think Pico's a fucking talented fighter, but all things into consideration, I do think he gets the wrestling going. It's just like, he hasn't proven to me that he can control guys. I've seen fights of him where guys are able to get back up to the feet, and I think Lerone has a really good game, especially in the big octagon, I do believe Pico could get open mat takedowns, and it's not like it's affected him in the past either, because I think Bellator, if I'm not mistaken, has an even bigger cage than the UFC. So it's like the guy's been fighting in a huge cage his entire career, and that's never affected him. It's a tough one, man. Maybe I just wind up passing, but I might take the long shot. Little sprinky sprink on the 28-1 Leron sub because I've went to the well on it, and it's just something that I've seen from him in the past. So if I didn't play it this time, I'd be like absolutely gutted.
Totally makes sense to me, brother.
Or
And
even if
listen,
he just uses
I'm
it.
biased as fuck, right? I always acknowledge I'm biased as fuck. When I'm biased, I'll tell you guys. And in this case, I'm definitely biased. I'm a fucking huge Aaron Pico fan, but I'm also a guy that runs the tape, right? And like I went back and watched his tape, and I did see him pursuing takedowns, being aggressive on top, using his ground and pound smart, being super aggressive with it, and breaking guys on the mat, knocking guys the fuck out on the mat with ground and pound. And going back and avenging some losses from earlier on in his career, which I always think is impressive too. So shout out to that. Yo, guys, I got a special guest for you.
Let's go.
How about the return of the Wiz? Let's go to the full screen for us guys. Wiz MMA in the building by popular demand.
So back. We are so back. What's up, boys? How are we?
Life is good, my man. Better now. How are you?
Doing good. Just got on a training right now. Had to do a little deeper training today. 3.5 hours pre-birthday routine. You have to do it. So we're thriving, on the way to the grocery store to get some groceries, make some food. And then I see you guys live, and I couldn't resist but hop in, chat some fights with the boys. I know we're on the co-main event right now. You guys let me know where you guys want to take it from here.
Dude, here's what I say, man. We've already been through it. We've given a lot of our thoughts, man. If you got anything you want to fire off your chest from anywhere on the card outside the main event, go right ahead, and then we'll circle back to the main event, my man. So the floor is yours, brother Wiz.
All right, so you know what, we'll start with the Pico fight since that's the last one that you guys talk about. Here's the thing. Pico trained with us at Classic Fight Team quite a bit this camp out here in California. He's been probably the most humble fighter I've probably met in my life. So it says a lot about his character. I've seen this dude come into the beginner classes. Like that should tell you something. So he's putting in work 2-3 times a day, which is always good to see when you're making your UFC debut. You know, you're making sure your cardio is in check. You're in peak conditioning, and you know, Pico's always shown up, and he's risen to the occasion. Now, on the other side, we have Lerone Murphy, who has not stopped showing improvements in the UFC. Really like his striking. The dude's really dynamic with what he throws and is able to angle out of a lot of bad situations, which is what saves him, I think, from getting knocked out or at least like hurt, as we've seen in a couple of his fights. So I think he's going to be able to, you know, move around and angle out of some of these wider shots that Pico throws. Holy shit, this dude was about to ram right into my car because he was making an illegal left turn. Anyways, I think Pico is going to be able to get the wrestling going. And that's just honest to God what I think. And this is not like, I didn't really get to interact with him all that much. I was just watching from afar, which is why I'm a little bit more comfortable speaking about it. But I just think that he will be able to get wrestling going if he wants to. And in the striking, I think he's able to stay safe and remain safe until he's able to chain in a takedown off of his striking or counter striking. All of this to say, I think Pico likely wins this fight 30-27. Pretty dominant decision. I think the wrestling is going to play a big factor. So that's my thoughts on the co-main. Trying to fire off some more off the top of my head. I'll give out this.
Here, I can feed you the card, brother. Do you have anything? And again, like if you just don't feel like talking about the fight, you can tell me that too,
Yep,
right? Like if you don't have any strong thoughts, but we've got Neil and Prates.
All right, so Neil Prates, I really think the value is on the inside the distance props either way if you like either side. I really think that these guys are going to go out there and bang, as they're saying in media day, and I think that's just the general consensus of what I get from Jeff Neal now, who at this point in his career is somewhat worn out, and his durability has always shown up, but the thing with Jeff Neal is he's mainly just a boxer. He doesn't really do anything else but that. And against the very high level Muay Thai striker and Carlos Prates, when you have a object in front of you, I'm sorry, that's disrespect. When you have a fighter in front of you like Jeff Neal, who is mainly going to stand square and try to box you up, it's going to be a little bit easier to time things, a little bit easier to land the multi punch, kick, knee, elbow combos that us Muay Thai fighters like to land, because you're not really giving off too much in terms of movement with your legs, and you're not kicking. There's no real threat to the kicking game there too. So I think Prates is going to be able to open up. So I favor his inside the distance props a little bit more. But it's going to be a banger of a fight. But yeah, I think fight ends inside the distance, and then ITD props for Prates.
We see that one the same way, my man. I also like Carlos Prates there. How do you feel about Cannonier and MVP? Anything there?
You know, Cannonier and MVP, I can see this in a couple of different ways. I can see this fight playing out. Now, Cannonier at this point is 41 and has not shown all that much regression in his game, except for in the cardio department and in the durability as of recently, and not even that much. So then you look at the other side of things. MVP is not really a natural 185er and has deficiencies in the wrestling game that Cannonier can expose, but Cannonier is someone who has fallen in love with his hands, and I just don't trust him to wrestle at this point. But at the same time, you're looking at the price tag at minus 190 to minus 200 here on MVP, and you start to question, I understand he's going to be the much faster, much more dynamic striker, and he's going to be able to get to the target a lot quicker than Jared Cannonier. But the takedown threat is very serious. It's that serious on the side of Cannonier. And if he actually, is smart and implores that game plan, I think he's very successful, and he makes this fight look like a hindsight hugely mispriced line. So I think MVP does end up getting it done, and I think he does knock Cannonier out. But am I laying the price tag is a different question.
Something I forgot to mention during that breakdown, but I think it's really important to mention, is that MVP was an underdog, guys, in his first 3 UFC fights. All of them at 170. He was a dog in each and every one of them, right? And now you're seeing that he's favored in his move up to 185 pounds, right? He beat Shara Bullet as a plus 165. He beat Kevin Holland as a plus 115 underdog. And then he was also an underdog the night that he lost to Ian Gary as well. So just something to keep in the back of our minds, right? Maybe it's a little bit of recency bias. Hey, I rattled off 2 UFC wins. Now everybody's flipped the script on me. And meanwhile, it's like a few years ago, people were thinking I was not going to have any success in the UFC, right? Think about how people talk about the Bellator fighters in certain matchups, and then in other matchups, they're high on them. So it's just something to think about. But next up, my man, we had Asakura and Tim Elliott. Anything here? We both lean towards violence, just in general principle.
I think if we're leaning violence, it's way more on the Asakura side. I'm not saying that Tim Elliott can't submit Kai Asakura, because he does have his deficiencies in the grappling. I just do not think it's that great. People are, thinking about the Pantoja fight. This guy is Tim Elliott. It's not Pantoja. I just don't see him getting off in the grappling the same way. Maybe in the wrestling department, he can control him on the ground and work him. But I also think that it is true, going from fighting in a ring to fighting in a cage, your first fight's going to be really just different. I have never fought in a cage. I've mainly just trained and fought in a ring. So I don't know how it is in a cage. And I can only imagine how different it is. So I do think
the angles are literally completely off, they're not even similar.
Your footwork is completely different. So it throws you off. And I think Asakura is going to come in with a point to prove, and I think he's going to get the knockout.
Hell yeah, my man. So we largely see it the same way. Is there anything on the prelims that you're looking at, my brother?
Let me pull up bout order. Now that I'm parked, it'll be easier. Where are we at?
Soldier.
I love listening to Wiz breakdown on the striking, bro. It comes in with a different analytic mindset when it comes to certain, things, especially on the feet, I've noticed.
Absolutely. And me and you are a couple of jiu-jitsu heads, as it goes. So certainly the striking pedigree from our guy Wiz helps the panel.
Much love, boys. Thank you.
Yeah, my boy Czar. Shout out to my boy Czar too. He got to go train with your guy Evan Elder. I saw him just post a picture of that lately. And another thing, I wanted to shout out my guy Lucrative as well. Hopefully, me and Liam actually both cool with Lucrative. That's how I met him. Shout out to the show Parlay Madness. But he just got an interview with Eric Nixick, and Eric Nixick, he's talking about how actually he watches some of us break down the fights to get a game plan for his fighters. Like he says that, a lot of what we do is, the groundwork for him. And I thought that was really cool. So people like Wiz, people like me, people like Liam, we got a lot of people watching us, man. So it's pretty cool. And shout out to Lucrative for getting that interview. I thought it was pretty dope. Eric Nixick, people shit on the guy, especially, his fighters are on a little bit of a downswing lately, but, people hate on you when you're down. When you're up, everybody likes you. So I think he's a solid coach.
How soon they forget, right? He just had a champion in Sean Strickland like a year and a half ago. So.
Francis Ngannou, like end of
among
the day.
others, right?
Yeah, so shout out to Lucrative getting that interview, doing big things, man. And hopefully we can make it out more to Vegas. I'd like to go out there and meet up with them also. Maybe I know my boy Wiz. Are you in Vegas also?
No, he's a California guy, I honestly summoned Wiz, I like to think, by pulling out the shirt.
Bro.
He saw the California flag and he was like, I'm pulling up right now.
Hell yeah.
Didn't you train with so you of course like Pico, I'm guessing, but didn't you train with Dariush, you said?
Well, yeah, the first gym I went to out here was King's MMA with Dariush.
So have you ever trained with
Vittori was with us and Giga.
Oh shit, that's fucking sick, bro. Have you ever trained with I think my boy trains with Giga. I gotta go look into it. My guy Jonathan, he's actually like a Hollywood guy, so I think he might go to that same gym. But have you ever gotten to train with Dione Barbosa? Like I know that they were saying she's like the jiu-jitsu coach over there. Is that any validity to that?
I just started going to, or there's this new gym that opened up called Triunfo, and it's Brazilian owned. One of the coaches is actually from Shooterbox, and he mentioned that Dione used to come to Triunfo a lot, but hasn't been there in a while. I personally have not seen her around here, no.
Interesting. No.
My bad. I was laughing at Liam's comments, bro. I love when you. I love when you.
I mean, bro. So I'm so rarely like perturbed by the chat, but I was just like, brother, you get like 6, and then I gotta just cut you off at the knees, All right, but fellas, I say we wrap this up and bring it to the main event. What do you think?
I'm gonna give you 2 more real quick. So
hell yeah.
Prelims. Edson Barbosa and Drakkar Klose. I think this line, I really don't see a world where Barbosa doesn't hurt Klose. Going up to 155, this guy's durability is going to be much improved. Drakkar Klose already is not the fastest of fighters in the striking realm. And if we've seen one thing in Barbosa's game that has evolved in his career, it's been takedown defense. But as of the last couple fights, it's been a little bit more shaky. So that's one thing to note. But I just think Barbosa is going to be the faster fighter. And I think at 155, he's going to be able to absorb a little bit more damage and dish out a hell of a lot more power in return. So I think Barbosa gets the dub there. Going to Mr. Susurkaev, I think the under 1.5 in that fight's good. Last but not least, Lord Mihal is going to do us good again. But let's go on to the main, boys.
He's gonna dissipate my boy GM3. Lord willing, not too bad because we're big GM3 fans on this show. But yeah, we're seeing that the same way as well. Unfortunately, Lord Mihal and the Fighting Nerds have come together to produce something special. But guys, when you talk about something special, a lot of times I rag on the UFC cards, right? When I think they deserve it because I have high standards as a fan. I've been watching this shit for a long time, so I like to see, is it really quality? Are they really trying to put their best foot forward? I think they're doing that. With this kind of main event, everybody has seen, a guy like this, a guy like Du Plessis, he goes out there, puts on a show. He goes out there, gets people's attention, right? He's hard to put away. The guy has not lost a fight in a long time. I think the last time was 2018 since his KSW days, right? Took over the UFC. Nobody was able to do anything about it. Meanwhile, Khamzat Chimaev, they talked about putting this guy in a title fight when he beat Gilbert Burns, right? And then he kind of disappeared. You know, he had some bouts of illnesses. He had some other things come up in his life. But every time we've seen him in the octagon, he's essentially been the most dominant first-round fighter in UFC history, certainly put himself on a short list of fighters that can claim that. And now, you know, he's got a guy who's got very good cardio. But frankly, guys, if you go back and look at Du Plessis' career, he's been in dire situations in the first round in several UFC fights, right, that we could talk about. So I think this is a fascinating fight. I think it's great matchmaking, and we're going to learn a lot about both guys and who's the best in the world. I think at 185 is going to be proven on Saturday night. So with that being said, we'll kick it off to Brother Wiz, our new guest of the show, back in the saddle. Brother Wiz, how do you see it going down in the main event? Do you like Dricus Du Plessis as the underdog, or do you like Khamzat Chimaev to finally claim that UFC title belt that they've been talking about since he debuted in the promotion?
You gotta say, first and foremost, if you haven't smashed the like button already, go ahead and do that. Get into the fight. I think this is arguably fight of the year. One of the most anticipated fights in quite a long time. I would probably put it second after Jones Aspinall, but this has a different feeling to it. There's a different kind of hatred.
Because this one's going to happen.
Yeah, this one's going to happen. And both guys bring a completely different style to the cage. On one hand, you have Khamzat Chimaev, the challenger, who is known for his just aggressive, uber aggressive style from bell, like from the first bell. And then he gets people out in the first round. He chokes them out, ragdolls them in the grappling, ground and pound. He knocks people out. His hands are crisp. And I think technically he's the better striker as well, along with obviously being the better wrestler and grappler. Now, you can be better in all of those aspects, and you could still be the worst MMA fighter, because it's not all about the skills. There's the intangibles that come with it. There's fighting through cardio depletion. There's just fight IQ, how you deal with getting hurt, feeling something that, you know, doesn't feel that good, getting kicked in the head, some shit like that. And I think that's where Dricus excels, and that's where Dricus has won his fights bell to bell. And the fight that comes to mind immediately when you mention Dricus showing the deficiencies in the wrestling in the first round, the Derek Brunson fight. Derek Brunson had this guy on death's door. I had a bet on Dricus there, and I honestly already knew I lost. And somehow, some way, he managed to survive, and he won the fight, which is, it's nuts. His ability to survive in difficult positions is honestly quite impressive. For what most of us thought coming up in his career, maybe just not the best fighter overall because of how he throws his shots or how he approaches the game. How Khamzat Chimaev approaches his fight, I think he's not going to change the way he fights. I don't think he's going to come out with a different game plan to try and surprise Dricus. I think he's going to go out there and try to do what he does. And I think he's going to find success early, but it all just depends on if Dricus can survive the initial onslaught. And I think that's just what everyone's take on the fight is. And you see in that Brunson fight, and it's just very bad grappling tendencies. But here's the thing, that fight was a long time ago, and he has made strides in terms of improvements in his game. So saying this, am I trying to make a point for Dricus plus 200? Yeah, I think at this point it's dog or pass. Now, I advocate for a bet on Dricus because I do think he is the much more proven fighter at this point. Would I prefer to bet on this fight? Probably not. I do have a unit position at plus 160 on Dricus. So me saying that, in my brain, I should immediately add at plus 200 here. But then I have hesitation, and I'm thinking of maybe hedging out of the position altogether at a slight loss, just because the more I tape, the more I think about the fight, the more I could see how Khamzat can go out there and just do what he does, given history in Dricus's tape. So I think Khamzat probably gets the round one submission, but if he doesn't, I think this is going to be a hell of a night, and you can go ahead and look at some live lines for Dricus. That's how I would rather approach it than take it pre. Because
I
how
think
often?
that's
Yeah, how
no.
often is
Please
he
go ahead.
winning round one? How often is he going to win round one? Maybe round two.
I mean, basically, by his own admission, he does not think he's going to win round one in this fight. Like, that was my takeaway from his interviews and stuff. He's like, "Oh, I'm getting taken down in the first round. Like, make no mistake about that." Like, I was like, "Okay, interesting." But he's a guy that kind of understands how he wins fights, which is bring you into a wild, chaotic pace that you don't want to be in for as long as I'm willing to be in it, and then beat you. Right. So that's the Du Plessis special, but certainly easier said than done when you go into a fight thinking like, I'm going to give up some takedowns. I'm going to be in some bad spots here early and have to rally, What do you think about this one, JB? Fun fight, interesting fight. It's the most anticipated on the card. Y'all, if y'all haven't dropped a like already, drop a like for our guy, JB. Let us have him, man. What do you think about this main event?
Yeah, I think DDP is kind of fucked here, bro. I think Khamzat's just like a different level of grappling. It's what I thought when I first seen the fight, and I'm not going to change my mind on it. I just think Dricus makes too many mistakes in the grappling versus people who aren't going to make him pay. You go back and watch that Derek Brunson fight. He gives up the front headlock to get back to his feet. Derek Brunson jumps a guillotine for whatever reason. Never gotten, not really the guillotine artist. I think Khamzat, snaps this guy down, threatens a Darce there, rides out to the back. He's just way too dominant positionally. I actually think you're getting a discount on one of the greatest fighters of all time in the octagon, and nobody's ever defeated him. So prove me wrong. I don't think DDP is the guy to do it. I think he's going to be at a really big deficiency in the grappling. Now, can he compete? I think he can compete early. I think he could survive early. I even think the round 2-3 sub for Khamzat could be sneaky, just because I don't think it's impossible that he submits him in round 3, bro. You go back and look at Dricus's losses in his career. He's been submitted twice in round 3. I don't think Khamzat's got complete doo-doo cardio, especially if he's the one dominating the exchanges, right? He could actually, conserve energy camping in some of these spots in the grappling. He's very good at finding spots to rest, and he's doing damage while doing so. So, I think Khamzat's just going to be too dominant positionally. The way he systematically breaks these people down, and it's hard to stop that level change because you never know when he's going to throw the hands, and he's very good at mixing that in. It's another thing that I heard Coach Nixick, he did a betting breakdown, and I believe he was talking about Khamzat Chimaev and how this guy changes levels and mixes in his hands. I could see him hurting DDP. Everybody on the sub, bro. Everybody if it's not an early sub, it's going to be a decision for Khamzat. What if he just fucking goes out there and knocks this guy out like he did Ikram Aliskirov? A guy who's now in the UFC. I don't know, bro. We've seen this guy hurt before. Derek Brunson was landing some big shots on him on the feet. Izzy was tuning him up, in my opinion, getting him tired. Well, who's to say Khamzat doesn't land big on the feet here? I love this fight in general, bro. I'm going to be honest with you, though. I'm getting fucking tired. My back feels like it's about to explode. Thank you for having me on, bro. If there's anything I could do, bro, Liam, let me know. If not, I'm going to go to bed. Love you, dog. Thank you for having me. Wish I could give you a big hug.
Brother. Peace, love, and chicken grease, my man. Until next time.
And my man,
let's
Wiz,
do it, guys.
We
got the main event.
Peace out.
Cheers, my brother. Guys, here it goes.
Peace,
main event breakdown. I've been fucking maybe 2 hours before this live stream, right? I was spending my time just trying to get prepared for this main event. I went back. I watched every Khamzat Chimaev fight in the UFC, guys. So I tried to do my due diligence here, right? I also went back and watched a bunch of Du Plessis footage. I've been super high on Dricus Du Plessis throughout his UFC run. Why? Because I think plus level athleticism, I think being a freak athlete, I think being a guy who's willing to go out there and inflict violence on people, being opportunistic with your submissions, also being able to push a decent pace. Those are all things that can contribute to wins, right? I've not been a guy who's been very bullish on fading Du Plessis. I thought that the price had corrected when he fought Sean Strickland the second time. I was like, yeah, you know what? He should have been a big favorite the first time. I thought he was going to beat Sean when they fought the first time. I thought he was going to beat Israel Adesanya. I thought he was going to beat Robert Whittaker. So in those cases, I was like, man, I'm pretty interested in Du Plessis, especially when he's at plus money. That's the kind of guy that I want to bet on. I did fade him once in the UFC with Darren Till, and I will point out, guys, in that fight, he kind of was inefficient with his energy. If you had to criticize Du Plessis, it's not that he doesn't have cardio, right? It's that he's not always efficient with his energy. And there's been times where he had to, get a second wind and rally back and get his breath back to him because he was gassed in the first round. And I think people have memory hold this because now he's had a couple good 5-round performances, right? But the thing about Sean Strickland is that he's not the most dangerous finisher, right? So if you're going to go out there with Dricus Du Plessis and not put him in any danger of being finished, it's going to be very hard to beat him. The guy can wrestle, the guy can strike, the guy can grapple. So where are you going to have an easy fight with him for 25 minutes? You're not going to, right? And I think that when you look at Khamzat Chimaev, somebody mentioned, it was my guy Rudy G in the chat, guys. Go check out Rudy G. He's doing his own content as well. A guy who's been talking to me in the DM. Seems like he knows what he's talking about, and I like his comments so far in the chat today as well. So shout out to Rudy G. But he was talking about, is anybody going to mention Khamzat Chimaev's tragic striking defense? And his striking defense is definitely the low point of his game. If you look, I argued on Twitter earlier, and you guys can watch these fights back and come to your own conclusion. If you disagree with me, that's fine. But I watched the fights back today in detail, and I felt like the fight between Gilbert Burns and Khamzat Chimaev is actually a closer fight than the fight with Kamaru Usman. And everybody remembers it like, yo, Usman beat him up in rounds 2 and 3, but that first round was all Chimaev. And honestly, I just don't see it that way after watching it back. Like what I saw watching it back today with no bias, I don't feel, right? Like I didn't have a side I wanted to be on coming into this. If you guys know my default biases, I'm normally like dog or pass, that's just my general way of approaching MMA because of the inherent volatility of this sport. I'm very reticent to pick favorites. So when I look at a guy like Chimaev, I'm going back through his footage and I'm trying to be critical. The Kamaru Usman fight, guys, Usman is in a locked-in rear naked choke. It's not fully beyond a shadow of doubt, hand behind the head, everything tucked away. It wasn't perfect, but he had all the elements that you need to get a rear naked choke, right? Arm under the chin. He's got it behind the head just a little bit. He's got the grip. And what happened there is Usman, who, guys, he's been submitted one time before, and it was via rear naked choke. He sold out in that moment 100% on defense by going and slamming himself face first into the floor because he knew Khamzat is on top of me. He's holding on for dear life. And if I slam myself, he's coming with me. He can't stop it. And he slammed him hard, guys. He hurt his wrist in that moment. So when you look back, you're like, holy shit. Khamzat Chimaev was dominating. He's on the way to a 10-8 round against Usman. Then Usman slams his way face first out of a rear naked choke, and Khamzat hurt his hand. So then you look at rounds 2 and 3. Khamzat is a lot more hesitant to wrestle in that round. And if you guys have ever tried to do anything with a broken hand, it doesn't feel good, right? Or a broken wrist or whatever injury he suffered in his arm. It was clearly an arm injury, based out on it. As soon as he suffers that injury, he's a lot more hesitant to grab a hold of this guy because he knows it's going to hurt like a motherfucker, right? So the guy picked his shots later on in the rounds with about 2 minutes left. He would go out there, get the takedown. And the striking, I remembered it being like Usman was owning him on the feet. The truth is, Chimaev was taking the shots. He was taking clean shots to the face sometimes on the feet, but he was throwing back, and he was throwing back to the head. He was throwing back to the legs. It looked like he was competing on the feet when I rewatched it. But because the first round, because Chimaev normally so dominant, we're like, oh my God, he looked like shit in rounds 2 and 3. And it's like, he just didn't look great. He just looked okay, right? He was out there against a former champion, by the way, a guy who's very physical, a guy who's still having success at his current age to this, very moment, right? He just had a main event where he dominated somebody for 5 rounds. So Usman's not washed to the point where he can't win a fight anymore, right? He goes out there against Chimaev and he got bully balled in the first round. It was a clear win for Chimaev. And then rounds 2 and 3, Chimaev was still able to get takedowns when he was hurt, and he was also able to kind of compete on the feet and keep it close enough. And when you go back and look at some of these fights for Dricus Du Plessis, guys, if he was just getting taken down, and by the way, I showed a lot of screenshots before while people were talking, right, of moments from his fights in the first round where he's flat on his back against Brad Tavares, where he's on his back in the full guard against Darren Till, where he's literally in a series of horrible positions against Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson, in the first couple seconds, takes him down. He scrambles back up to a shitty front headlock and gets thrown, pancaked over to his back, flat on his back, pinned in the center of the octagon, and it's not a full minute into the contest. So I have seen multiple times Dricus Du Plessis get taken down on the ground, get thrashed on the ground for various points. Brad Tavares was able to control him on the ground for like 3.5 minutes after he took him down off a failed takedown from Du Plessis. Du Plessis, in some ways, is like Aaron Pico, right? And again, I'm not saying this is a one-to-one comparison, but what do I mean? Du Plessis loves to go out there, take guys down, put them through the pressure cycle, hit them with big shots on the feet, put doubt in their mind. That's where he's dangerous, right? He is an MMA fighter, mixed martial arts, every part of it. Against Robert Whittaker, what did he need first? Take him down, ground and pound, beat him up. Then I can finish him on the feet. Against Israel Adesanya, he had to take some shots on the feet. He had to take some ugly takedown attempts to make that guy tired and try and bring him into that difficult fight. And when I look at this fight, I don't think Du Plessis has the wrestling valve of safety that he had in so many other fights. Against Sean Strickland, guys, I told people, I was like, I think this is, and this is the first fight, by the way. I said, I think this is going to be the most dominant wrestling performance against Sean Strickland since Kamaru Usman. And he got him down 6 times. That's what Du Plessis does. If you give him pressure, if you apply a lot of pressure to him, he's going to try and take you down. He's going to try and get on top of you. He's going to try and put you through the ringer. So that is the part about Du Plessis that's super impressive, man. He sticks to his game plan. He's willing to adapt on the fly if he needs to. He said before, I go back to my corner, and if everything's going wrong, I tell my coach, their game plan's fucked. It's not working. Try something new. What else should I do? And his coach gives him something new to do. So Team CIT, they understand in this fight, like, hey, we've got a difficult challenge in front of us. We got a guy who's in phenomenal physical specimen. He's going to be able to pick us up and probably throw us sideways for the first 5 minutes. So how do we manage? How do we sustain? How do we maybe chip away at him, throw to the body, throw to the legs, try and take away some of the dynamic offense that makes this guy special? Because I'll tell you guys, Khamzat Chimaev in most of his fights is getting easily to these takedowns. He's getting people to the ground. When they start getting back up, he's chipping away, taking the leg back from underneath him, taking the side out from underneath him, and Robert Whittaker showed a lot of really good instincts for what to do when somebody takes you down. He's fighting hands. He's working back up to his feet. He's getting a foot underneath him. He's sealing off. He's trying to do a lot of things to prevent these hooks from coming in. And every time he'd get one out, the other side would come in. And every time he'd get one out, he'd get returned back to the mat. And every time he'd have a good position, he would get put back to a bad position. And then, guys, it was as quick as apply the choke, and he tapped, right? And I thought, yo, Robert Whittaker's done. He's just not about this life anymore. And then you see the picture that DC leaked that he's not supposed to, of the dude's row of front teeth folded back into his mouth because of one squeeze from the dude. And you have to respect, guys. I've been grappling. I've been doing these jiu-jitsu things. It's very rare that you see somebody squeeze somebody else in any, tournament, whatever, and just folds their row of teeth in, right? He's wearing a mouthpiece, by the way. That's incredible strength. That's an incredible squeeze. So I have seen Derek Brunson apply a rear naked choke to Dricus Du Plessis in the first round, right? If that's Khamzat Chimaev applying that squeeze, the fight could be over shortly thereafter, right? And I think that when you look at Khamzat Chimaev, he's got knockout power on the feet as well, right? Robert Whittaker stole a page out of his book when he fought Ikram Alaskarov. What did he get him with, man? Boom! Uppercut from south of Hades, and Khamzat Chimaev did it first. So when you look back, I think Khamzat Chimaev's a really impressive guy. I think he's a really impressive fighter. You don't have to like him, but the guy is one of the biggest stars in the UFC, period, in terms of his social media, in terms of how people relate to this guy. He's got 10.6 million on Instagram. The guy's a star, bona fide, right? He's, representing a part of the world, the UAE, that the UFC's been trying to do a lot of business in lately, right? Trying to do these big cards, trying to bring these championship events. And by the way, who's one of the guys that gets the biggest pop over there? It's Khamzat Chimaev, man, and he represents. He's got the flag and everything. He's bringing in his Chechen buddy. Dana's signing him up, getting everybody right. Hey, let's bring a party and let's bring the team in. And again, he's got to go out there and do his job. He's got to go out there and beat one of the very best guys in the world. But he's been saying since he got here that he's the best, and now he gets his chance to go prove it. And if you said to me, Liam, who do you think is going to win the fight? I think it's going to be Khamzat Chimaev. I think that Khamzat Chimaev has the skills to win the fight. And ultimately, more often than not, when I'm picking fights, I'm picking based on skills. Now, I've always talked about on this show, the ABCs say always bet on cardio. And I do think that Du Plessis has very good cardio. So there is a chance he could win this fight. But when I talk about how I approach betting on fights, if I think somebody's going to win the first round, it's hard to make somebody else a favorite, right? I think that Khamzat Chimaev is going to win the first round here at a pretty high clip. I think if you like the Du Plessis side, you may have an opportunity to bet on him plus 250, plus 300 after a round, assuming he survives, and then you get a better chance of winning the fight, right? Like, now I've avoided this scary monster in the first round, and then maybe he can tire out. Maybe he can become a little bit more human down the stretch. Is it possible Du Plessis finishes him in one round? Anything's possible. It's a fight. But do I think that's exceedingly slim in terms of possibilities relative to Khamzat dominating the wrestling in the first round? That's what I think is going to happen. So if that's how I expect it to go down, then I think Du Plessis is a better live bet than a pre-bet, right? Just based on the stylistics, based on how I see them matching up. And the thing that I want to just mention here, again, is I'll go photo for photo for you guys really quick. What do you think that Khamzat Chimaev's doing in positions like these? He's putting you into the same series that a lot of guys have very much struggled to deal with. And Derek Brunson, guys, was 10 years the senior of Dricus Du Plessis. This was a 29-year-old against a 39-year-old. And Derek Brunson took his lunch money for 5 full minutes and then death gassed like he normally does, right? We talked about he gave a scare to Jared Cannonier. He death gassed in the same way that he normally does. And then that was the fight, right? But this image for me was everything that I find it very difficult to just outright pick a guy in Du Plessis who got summarily outgrappled for the first 5 minutes by a guy in Derek Brunson, who, again, I respect, who was a staple of the middleweight top 10, but who is not on the same level of wrestling and grappling, in my opinion, that Khamzat Chimaev is. And so for those reasons, I'm going Khamzat Chimaev and new. I think he's going to get his 9th win. I think he's going to finish this guy in the first 3 rounds. But I will also acknowledge this could be a fight that is a 48-47 fight of the year type war. And in that kind of fight, you'd probably want Du Plessis at the big plus money. So fair play to everybody, no matter what side you're on. I respect Du Plessis as an underdog, what he's accomplished, what he's willing to do. I say, look for people that are willing to go fight hard for your money. Du Plessis has shown he's willing to do that. If the going gets hard, if his lungs start burning, that's not going to scare him. I just think that technique and skills matter, and I think that Khamzat Chimaev has the better technique and skills. So for me, give me Khamzat Chimaev to get the job done in the main event. Brother Wiz, anything you want to add before we get out of here, my man? I know you just got that nutrition. You're ready to get your gains going before you get your rest and recovery tonight.
Oh yeah, I got 3 steaks. I got some of those kettle corn pop chips, and then a Caesar salad. Some fire gains right now. I just see the violence angle in this fight being also very lucrative. I haven't really looked at the lines for those, so I'm gonna have to take a look at them once I get home. But yeah, I think that Chimaev more often than not gets it done. But if DDP is able to, weasel his way out like he usually does, then
my man, I think we just blipped out on the audio for 1 second. Could you repeat that?
Oh, I think it was because it was connecting to my car. I was saying I do think that Chimaev more often than not gets it done early. The more that I think of it and the more that I tape. But if he's not able to get it done early, I do see potential. There we go. Now I'm back. I do see potential for DDP to come back and cardio being a dynamic. So I think Chimaev is going to have to mind his P's and Q's as this fight goes on, if it does beyond round 2. And he's going to have to mind his cardio, because in that 3-round fight against Burns, yeah, he showed that he's able to push through it, but he was not fast and Burns was aging.
Yeah, man. And here's the thing I'll note. I went back and watched, and in that fight, like, the one thing I'll note is Gilbert Burns presents some threats on the ground, right? He's throwing up triangles. He's throwing up arm bars. That's actually where he's the best in terms of his jiu-jitsu, right? In terms of danger factor. We don't really see Gilbert Burns very often as like a top player jiu-jitsu guy. When he is, it's that head and arm choke. It's Neil Magny, guys that are a little bit less physical and less skilled in the jiu-jitsu per se. But I think that, Khamzat kind of plays that bully ball grappling style, but he does it extremely technically. And Du Plessis kind of plays it like super aggro guerrilla style, and it's not as technical, right? Like, he does the pass against Robert Whittaker where he just like grabs the guy, can openers him as hard as he can and squeezes. Like, that kind of shit works when you're the physical hoss in the matchup. And I just don't know that he's the physical hoss this time. You see these guys square up. You see Dricus Du Plessis, talk about Chimaev. He's like, this guy's fucking huge, right? And then you see Chimaev juxtaposed with Sadulaev and these guys that are fucking big, that move around, big, heavyweight men. And he's moving with them, and he looks like he's the same size. So for me, this is a fucking fascinating fight. I'm fired up. I'll give credit and respect to whoever wins this one. Call him the best in the world. For me, I said a long time ago that I thought Chimaev was the best middleweight in the world. I just didn't think he had an opportunity yet. there's other guys that are making their case, right? Hernandez, Caio Barajo, Nasruddin Imava, all these guys are trying to make their case even without the title fights. Middleweight's heating up right now, right? RDR as well, just put his name on the map. But this guy, Khamzat Chimaev, they basically touted him as a UFC champion when he arrived in the promotion, and things went slower than they expected. He's got his opportunity right now, and the kid has basically shown up and 10-8'd everybody that he fought in the first round. So it would take a special effort from DDP to not be behind to start this fight. So for me, it's Chimaev pre, whether that's the rounds or however you want to play it, a finish prop, something like that. And if not, then you're looking at Du Plessis maybe as a live entry and try and avoid that round one squash match type equity. But Green King pointed it out. Khamzat was just tossing around DC, and like the way he's effortlessly lifting a man who's probably 265 pounds, he's a freak, guys. No doubt about that in my mind.
I will leave it with this. So Chimaev has been training out here in Cali. Not at
Sam
any of the gyms that I
Calavita
attend.
and crew.
He's been training at Santos Studios, which is the gym it's right next to my Muay Thai gym called Rising Suns, and he's with none only than TJ Dillashaw, and he's been working with his coaches, and we kind of know what comes out of that camp in terms of cardio. So let's see if he took some of the TJ Dillashaw vitamins.
The 3-letter special, bro. EPO.
Yep. So he's been training out there with them, and he's also gotten rounds with Khalil Roundtree out here. Luke Rockhold was out here too with him. Arman, quite a few guys. So that Santos Studio gym, it's starting to become something out here in California, but we'll see what they make of it. It's a lot of like higher level guys.
Small type of feel.
It is a smaller team, very private, but it's as I mentioned, like all of those names are there, plus more. So it's a bunch of savages.
I love it. Also, the thing I wanted to note is Chimaev did put together like training camps with the Russian Wrestling Federation before this as well. Like he's been putting himself in there with a lot of really high level guys, and that's one thing that I think is impressive about Chimaev. Like he's fought a lot of the best guys in sparring sessions in the weight class, and most of those guys, don't talk about how it turned out, right? Because it didn't go so good for him, right? And that for me is also a bullish case on Chimaev. He's got to go out there and do it in front of the bright lights. He's got to do it when the stakes are the highest. All that's true. But in terms of what I know that this guy's capable of, like against the best guys in the world, he's put some of them away, many of them in the training room. So I think that this is the kind of guy that is ready to break out and have that big moment. But Du Plessis, he ain't going to give it to you for free, man. You're going to have to take it. And I think Chimaev is probably going to have to submit this guy to get him out of there. He could TKO him. He could, maybe bank the first couple rounds and hang on for a decision type of thing. Because I do think Chimaev's tough as well. Like one thing I will tell you guys is he was getting slapped about with some big power shots from Gilbert Burns in that fight, and he took a couple deep breaths, kept coming forward, and kept applying pressure. And in a very close round 3, I thought he out-hustled Gilbert Burns to the finish line and won that fight, and it was a close one where he had to earn it. So for me, that's another indicator where it's like, I know people have their skepticism about Chimaev, but when I've seen the chips down and this guy needs to go get it in round 2 and round 3, he's taken down Kamaru Usman, which is extremely difficult to do. When he needs to go get it, he's walking down Gilbert Burns, getting in his face in the fire in the last 30 seconds to make sure he left a positive impression with the judges. So for me, I'm fucking fired up. I can't wait for this fight card, guys. UFC 319 is going down on Saturday. Lord willing, I'll have a little bit more content after the post weigh-in, but I got to prioritize doing my writing and everything else for tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm going to have more DFS thoughts. I'm going to have a betting strategy guide going, and I'm going to have my main card preview done. A lot of work still to be done. So let's get some rest, guys. I want to say thank you to everybody who showed up live. Thank you to my 2 great guests on the show today. Jewish Better, my man is getting some Z's, I hope. And then my guy, Wiz MMA, showing up, representing for Cali, doing his damn thing. Appreciate you always, my brother. Please, the floor is yours. Anything you want to tell people, anything you want to get off your chest, my man, it's all yours.
First and foremost, thanks for letting me drop in just unannounced like this out of nowhere. I just saw you guys live and I was like, hey, send me the link. So thanks for having me on. And this break is going to come to an end pretty soon. It's been much needed from content. I just needed to reset. especially after a couple of bad losses. I wanted to completely like dial in, and it worked out really well. I'm on a 3-event winning streak, almost 10 units in the positive since then. So looking to continue the good results this Saturday, and we'll go from there, man. I'm really excited for this card, and it's a banger, man. I really like it. From afar, I thought it was one of the lower tiered, numbered events, and then the more I looked into it, there's a lot of bangers. So really excited.
Absolutely, brother. I couldn't be more excited myself. I want to say, once again, thank you to everybody for rocking with us in the chat as well. We got 109 people rocking with us live. It's 1:46 a.m. local time here on the East. So thank you guys to everybody who stayed up late with us. If you don't mind, drop a like on the stream. Make sure that you're subscribed to the channel. If you never want to miss when we go live here on this channel, hit that bell for notifications. Goes a long way as well. But that's all I got for you guys today. If you have comments, questions, concerns, fire them off down in the chat below. I try and be as responsive as possible. Last week, we put the show out on Friday, made it very difficult to get back to everybody before fight time. This time, guys, it's out on Thursday. Should have time to get back to you guys Friday or Saturday early. So thank you guys very much for engaging with the show. Thank you guys for all your support. I wish you all nothing but the best of luck. God bless. Good luck. Enjoy those fights and come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. Thanks, everybody.